In the corner office of Meridian Analytics, I adjusted my new leather chair, gazing at the Manhattan skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. 3 years ago, I'd cleared out my cubicle on the 4th floor of this very building, carrying my belongings in a cardboard box while my colleagues snickered behind their monitors. "Poor Ryan," they whispered, "throwing away a stable career for some pipe dream." If they could see me now, executive director, sitting in the office that once belonged to the man who told me I was making the biggest mistake of my life. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't getting even. It's proving everyone wrong by succeeding beyond their wildest expectations. This is how I went from office laughingstock to the boss everyone suddenly wanted to impress. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. Monday mornings at Meridian Analytics always began the same way. The elevator doors would open to reveal an ocean of gray cubicles illuminated by harsh fluorescent lighting. The air smelled of burnt coffee and desperation. For 5 years, I'd been senior data analyst Ryan Mitchell, reliable, unassuming, and utterly replaceable. My cubicle sat in what we called the dungeon, the middle section of the 4th floor where natural light never reached. My morning ritual: boot up the ancient company laptop, check emails, and prepare for the 9:30 weekly status meeting where Marcus Fletcher, our department head, would inevitably find something to criticize about my team's work. "Ryan, these quarterly projections need to be recalculated. The variance is too high," Marcus would say without looking up from his phone. I'd nod, knowing full well the variance was within acceptable parameters, but arguing meant staying late to rerun numbers that didn't need fixing. Marcus had been my boss for 3 years. He wore custom Italian suits, kept his salt and pepper hair perfectly styled, and never missed an opportunity to remind everyone he had an MBA from Wharton. The company worshipped him because he'd increased departmental efficiency by 22% in his first year, mostly by cutting corners and overworking his team. My colleagues and I were hamsters on a wheel, running endless reports for clients who barely read them. Jessica Parker, who occupied the cubicle next to mine, summed it up perfectly. "We're data janitors, cleaning up numbers so executives can pretend they understand analytics." Jessica was my closest ally at Meridian, a brilliant statistician with a dry sense of humor. She'd been passed over for promotion twice, despite consistently outperforming her peers. We'd often grab lunch together at the deli across the street, where we'd dream up escape plans from corporate purgatory. That particular Monday in April started like any other, except I had a secret tucked in my messenger bag, a business proposal. From Ethan Sawyer, an old college friend who'd been working on a startup called Data Vision for the past year. Ethan had reached out the previous week, asking if I'd be interested in joining as Chief Analytics Officer. "We're developing an AI platform that can interpret complex data sets and generate actionable insights in real time," Ethan had explained during our video call. "We need someone who understands both the technical side and the business applications. Someone like you, Ryan." The offer was tempting but terrifying. Data Vision had secured initial funding but was still pre-revenue. Joining meant taking a 40% OIVR pay cut and abandoning the security of my position at Meridian. Still, the prospect of building something meaningful, of escaping the monotony of corporate life, made my heart race with possibility. I'd spent the weekend poring over Data Vision's business plan, finding both promise and pitfalls. The technology was innovative, but the market was crowded with established players. Success wasn't guaranteed, but failure seemed equally possible. As I sat through the morning status meeting, half listening to Marcus drone on about client retention metrics, I found myself staring at the motivational poster behind his head. "Risk is the price of opportunity." The irony wasn't lost on me. After the meeting, Jessica stopped by my desk. "You okay? You looked like you were on another planet there." I hesitated, then pulled her into the break room. "I might be leaving Meridian," I whispered, glancing around to ensure we were alone. What? Did you finally get that job at Goldman? Her eyes widened. No, it's a startup. My friend Ethan's company, Data Vision. They want me to join as CAO. Jessica's expression shifted from surprise to concern. A startup? In this economy? Ryan, have you thought this through? I've been thinking about nothing else, I admitted. The work sounds challenging, meaningful. I'd have equity. If it takes off. That's a big if, she interrupted. How established are they? They've secured seed funding. About 18 months of runway, Jessica sighed. That's not a lot of time to become profitable. Look, you know I support you, but startups are risky, especially now with venture capital drying up. She wasn't saying anything I hadn't already, told myself, but hearing the doubts voiced aloud made them more substantial, more threatening. I'm 35, Jess. If I don't take a chance now, when will I? Before she could respond, Marcus appeared in the doorway. Mitchell, Parker, this isn't a social hour. Those quarterly reports won't analyze themselves. He smirked at his own joke while we shuffled back to our desks. Later that afternoon, I scheduled a meeting with Marcus to discuss my potential departure. His assistant, Tanya, raised an eyebrow when I requested time on his calendar, but slotted me in for 4:30 p.m. The hours crawled by as anxiety twisted my stomach into knots. By 4:15, I'd rewritten my resignation speech a dozen times in my head. By 4:25, I was seriously considering canceling the meeting and forgetting the whole thing. At 4:30 sharp, I knocked on Marcus's door. Come in, he called, not looking up from his monitor. His office was twice the size of my apartment, with views of Central Park and walls adorned with framed awards and photos of Marcus shaking hands with company executives. Ryan, he acknowledged after making me stand awkwardly for half a minute. What's so important it couldn't be handled by email? I took a deep breath. I wanted to let you know I'm considering an opportunity with another company. That got his attention. He leaned back in his chair, studying me with newfound interest. Oh, who's making an offer? It's a startup called Data Vision. They're developing an AI analytics platform that... Marcus burst into laughter, cutting me off mid-sentence. A startup? You're leaving a secure position at Meridian for some garage operation? He shook his head, amusement dancing in his eyes. Let me guess. They offered you a fancy title and some worthless equity? My face burned. The title is Chief Analytics Officer, and yes, there's an equity package. Chief Analytics Officer, he repeated mockingly. Impressive title for a company that'll probably fold within a year. You do realize the failure rate for tech startups is over 90%, right? Data Vision has solid funding and a strong business model, I countered, trying to keep my voice steady. Marcus's smile faded, replaced by something resembling concern. Look, Ryan, you're a good analyst. Not exceptional, but solid. You have stability here, a reliable paycheck, benefits, a clear advancement path. I've been in the same position for 5 years, I pointed out. Because you haven't distinguished yourself enough for promotion, he replied dismissively. But joining a failing startup isn't the answer. It's career suicide. His words stung because they tapped into my deepest fears. What if he was right? What if I was throwing away a decent career for a fantasy that would implode within months? I appreciate your concern, I said stiffly, but I've made my decision. Marcus sighed dramatically. How much are they offering? Maybe we can match it. It's not about the money. Actually, I'll be taking a pay cut initially. This revelation triggered another round of laughter. You're taking a pay cut to join a doomed venture? That's even worse than I thought. He leaned forward, suddenly serious. When this startup inevitably crashes and burns, don't expect to walk back in here. Meridian doesn't rehire quitters. I stood, my decision solidifying with each condescending word from his mouth. I'll submit my formal resignation tomorrow. I'd like to give 2 weeks' notice. Don't bother with 2 weeks, Marcus waved dismissively. We'll survive without you. Clear out your desk by Friday. Walking back to my cubicle, I felt simultaneously liberated and terrified. News traveled fast at Meridian. By the time I reached my desk, curious eyes were already following me, whispers spreading like wildfire. Jessica appeared beside me, concern etched across her face. You did it? You actually resigned? I nodded, still processing the reality of my decision. How did Fletcher take it? About as well as you'd expect. He laughed in my face and told me I was committing career suicide. Typical, Jessica muttered. So what happens now? I clear out by Friday and start at DataVision next Monday. The words sounded surreal coming from my mouth. The next morning, the atmosphere changed. Colleagues who normally greeted me with friendly small talk suddenly became busy when I approached. During lunch, I overheard Trevor from accounting telling someone, Mitchell's lost his mind, joining some half-baked startup. He'll be back begging for his job in 6 months. Only Jessica remained supportive, though even she couldn't hide her skepticism. Promise me one thing, she said during our final lunch together. If this DataVision thing implodes, call me first. I know people at Goldman who might be able to help. By Friday, my cubicle was empty except for company property. As I packed the last of my personal items, a family photo, a novelty stress ball, a dying succulent, Marcus strolled by. Last chance to reconsider this foolishness, Mitchell, he offered, loud enough for nearby colleagues to hear. I appreciate the concern, but I'm looking forward to the new opportunity, I replied diplomatically. He shrugged. Your funeral. Don't say I didn't warn you. As I walked toward the elevator with my box of belongings, I felt eyes on my back. Some pitying, some amused, all convinced I was making a catastrophic mistake. The doors closed on my old life, and a wave of panic threatened to overwhelm me. What had I done? My first day at DataVision couldn't have been more different from Meridian. Instead of a corporate high-rise, their office occupied the entire top floor of a renovated warehouse in Brooklyn. Plants hung from exposed beams, natural light flooded through industrial windows, and a small team of about 15 people worked at communal tables rather than isolated cubicles. Ethan greeted me with a bear hug. Ryan, welcome to the revolution, man. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. At 36, Ethan had the energy of someone a decade younger. His curly brown hair was perpetually disheveled, and he wore the unofficial tech entrepreneur uniform, jeans, sneakers, and a plain t-shirt under an unbuttoned dress shirt. Let me introduce you to the team, he said, guiding me through the open space. Unlike at Meridian, where hierarchies were rigid and departments rarely mixed, DataVision's culture was deliberately fluid. Engineers sat beside marketing specialists, designers collaborated with data scientists, and everyone shared ideas freely. My workspace consisted of a standing desk near a window overlooking the East River. No cubicle walls, no fluorescent lighting, no soul-crushing beige carpet. It felt like stepping into another dimension. We have a company-wide meeting every Monday at 10, Ethan explained. Perfect timing for your first day. You can introduce yourself and get a sense of where we stand. The meeting took place in what they called the living room, a corner of the office with comfortable couches arranged in a semicircle. Ethan opened by introducing me to the team, who welcomed me with genuine enthusiasm. Ryan's expertise in advanced analytics is exactly what we need to refine our AI models, Ethan told them. He's going to help us build something revolutionary. The pressure of those expectations weighed heavily as team members presented updates on their projects. The technology was impressive, but still riddled with challenges. Their AI could process enormous datasets quickly, but its interpretative capabilities needed refinement. My mind raced with potential solutions, ideas I'd never been able to implement at Meridian due to bureaucratic inertia. After the meeting, Ethan showed me the prototype they'd been developing. "We're calling it Analyt IQ," he explained. "It's designed to democratize data science, make advanced analytics accessible to companies without specialized teams." "What's your target market?" I asked, examining the sleek interface. Initially, mid-sized businesses struggled to leverage their data effectively. Long-term, we want to scale to enterprise solutions. We spent the afternoon diving into technical specifics, and I identified several areas where my expertise could immediately add value. For the first time in years, I felt intellectually stimulated, my skills being used for innovation rather than maintenance. That evening, as I rode the subway home, exhaustion and excitement battled for dominance. The work was challenging in the best possible way, but doubts lingered. Had I made the right choice? Was I naive to believe in DataVision's potential when the odds were stacked against us? My first month flew by in a blur of 18-hour days, takeout dinners at my desk, and exhilarating breakthroughs interspersed with frustrating setbacks. Unlike Meridian's predictable routine, each day at DataVision brought new challenges requiring creative solutions. I worked closely with Sarah Chen, our brilliant lead engineer whose coding skills bordered on wizardry. Together, we refined the core algorithms driving Analyt IQ, making significant improvements to its predictive accuracy. "This is light years beyond what I expected," Sarah told me after we successfully implemented a pattern recognition feature I'd developed. "Where were you hiding these ideas at your old job?" "In spreadsheets no one ever read," I admitted. The camaraderie at DataVision fostered a sense of belonging I'd never experienced professionally. We celebrated small victories with impromptu happy hours, commiserated over obstacles during late-night coding sessions, and genuinely cared about each other's well-being. But behind the positive culture lurked the constant pressure of limited runway. Our seed funding would last another 14 months at current burn rate, and while early feedback from potential clients was promising, we hadn't secured any paying customers. 6 weeks after I joined, Ethan called an emergency meeting. The venture capital firm that had verbally committed to lead our Series A funding round had pulled out, citing market volatility. "This doesn't change our trajectory," Ethan insisted, though the tension in his voice betrayed his concern. "We adjust, adapt, and push forward. We have enough runway to secure alternative investment if we tighten our belts." That night, I couldn't sleep. Marcus's mocking prediction echoed in my mind. "You'll be back begging for your job in 6 months." Had I gambled my career on a losing hand? The next morning, I arrived early to find Ethan already at his desk, eyes red from what was clearly an all-nighter. "We need to accelerate our timeline," he said without preamble. "Get a minimum viable product in front of potential clients within 2 months instead of 4. "That's ambitious," I cautioned. "We've made progress, but the core functionality still needs work." "We don't have a choice, Ryan. Without that Series A, we're dead in the water by next summer." The revised timeline meant even longer hours and higher stakes. We postponed less critical features and focused entirely on delivering a streamlined version of Analyt IQ that could demonstrate clear value to potential clients. My role expanded beyond analytics to include client presentations and product demonstrations. My experience at Meridian proved unexpectedly valuable. I understood the pain points of corporate data teams and could articulate how our solution addressed them. 3 months into my tenure at DataVision, we secured our first client, a regional healthcare provider struggling to derive meaningful insights from patient data. The contract was smaller than we'd hoped, but it validated our concept and bought us precious time. "This is just the beginning," Ethan assured the team during our celebration. Ryan's presentation sealed the deal. His understanding of their challenges made them believe we weren't just selling technology. We were solving problems. The validation boosted morale temporarily, but the fundamental challenge remained. Without significant additional funding or a dramatic increase in revenue, DataVision's days were numbered. 6 months after leaving Meridian, I received an unexpected text from Jessica. "Heard anything about Marcus Fletcher lately?" "No, why?" I replied. "He's been fired. Seems like those quarterly projections he had you manipulating caught up with him. The numbers never added up. The whole department's being restructured." I stared at my phone in disbelief. The man who'd laughed me out of his office, who'd predicted my professional demise, had engineered his own downfall through the very practices I'd quietly objected to for years. That evening, as I recounted the news to Ethan over beers, he raised an interesting point. "You know Meridian's products inside and out. Have you considered them as a potential client for Analyt IQ?" The suggestion seemed absurd initially. They'd never work with us. Marcus poisoned that well thoroughly on my way out. "But Marcus is gone," Ethan countered. "And from what you've told me, their analytics infrastructure is outdated and inefficient. Exactly the problem we solve." The idea took root in my mind. Meridian's data challenges were substantial, and without Marcus blocking the way, perhaps, there was an opening. I still had contacts there, including Jessica, who could potentially arrange an introduction to the new department leadership. "It's worth exploring," I conceded, though the prospect of walking back into Meridian, not as a failure, but as a vendor, filled me with both anxiety and a touch of vindication. Little did I know that this conversation would set in motion a chain of events that would transform both DataVision's future and my own professional trajectory in ways I couldn't possibly imagine. The idea of approaching Meridian as a potential client seemed both brilliant and terrifying. 7 months had passed since I'd walked out of that building carrying my belongings in a cardboard box, the subject of whispers and mockery. Now I might return representing DataVision, not as the failure everyone predicted, but as a solution provider. Jessica proved invaluable in arranging the meeting. "They've appointed Diane Harlow as interim department head," she informed me over coffee. "She was brought in from outside to clean up Marcus's mess. No loyalty to the old regime, which works in your favor." "What's she like?" I asked mentally, preparing for another Marcus-type personality. "Smart, pragmatic, actually listens to the team." Jessica stirred her latte thoughtfully. "She's been tasked with modernizing our data infrastructure. Your timing couldn't be better." "And the rest of the team? How would they react to seeing me again?" Jessica smirked. "Mixed bag. Some will be shocked you're still employed. Others might be secretly impressed. Trevor from accounting actually asked about you last week. Wondered if your startup had crashed yet." The mention of crashing wasn't far from reality. Despite our first client, DataVision's finances remained precarious. We'd secured 2 additional, small contracts, but our burn rate still exceeded revenue. Without a significant deal or new investment, we had perhaps 7 months of runway remaining. When I shared Jessica's intel with Ethan, his eyes lit up. Meridian would be transformative for us. They're exactly the type of established company with legacy systems that needs our solution. "If we land them," I cautioned. "When we land them," he corrected with characteristic optimism, "we need to prepare the most compelling demonstration possible. Customize it specifically for their pain points." For the next 2 weeks, I worked with Sarah and our product team to tailor Analyt IQ for Meridian's unique challenges. I knew their data architecture intimately, its strengths and considerable weaknesses. We designed a demo that would address specific bottlenecks in their quarterly reporting process, potentially saving weeks of manual labor. The night before the presentation, anxiety kept me awake. I'd rehearsed countless times, anticipating every possible question or objection. Still, the prospect of facing my former colleagues as a vendor rather than a coworker filled me with apprehension. What if they were right all along? What if this meeting confirmed I'd made a catastrophic career mistake? The Meridian building looked exactly as I remembered. Imposing glass and steel reaching skyward, the company logo illuminated above the entrance. The security guard did a double take when I presented my visitor badge. "Mitchell, weren't you—" "I'm here for a meeting with Diane Harlow," I interrupted, forcing a confident smile. The elevator ride to the 12th floor, executive territory I'd rarely visited as an employee, gave me time to steady my nerves. Ethan stood beside me, tablet in hand, projecting the calm assurance I was struggling to maintain. "We've got this," he murmured as the doors opened. "No one knows their problems better than you do." Diane Harlow wasn't what I expected. In her early 40s with short auburn hair and rectangular glasses, she exuded competence without Marcus's suffocating arrogance. She greeted us warmly in a conference room overlooking Central Park. "Ryan Mitchell," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "Jessica speaks highly of your capabilities. I understand you have intimate knowledge of our analytics challenges." 5 years' worth, I confirmed. The meeting included Diane, Jessica, and 3 other team members. 2 I recognized from my time at Meridian, and 1 new hire who managed their cloud infrastructure. Notably absent were the colleagues who'd been most vocal about my foolish decision to join a startup. Our presentation began with Ethan outlining DataVision's mission and Analyt IQ's core capabilities. Then I took over, demonstrating how the platform could transform Meridian's reporting processes. "Your current quarterly analysis requires 3 weeks of preparation, with data pulled from 17 separate systems and manually reconciled in Excel," I explained, showcasing our solution. Analyt IQ can automate these integrations, reducing preparation time by 70% and virtually eliminating human error. I walked them through a simulation using anonymized data structured to mirror Meridian's own. The room's energy shifted as team members leaned forward, asking increasingly specific questions about implementation timelines and technical specifications. Jessica caught my eye across the table and gave an almost imperceptible nod. We were connecting. After the technical demonstration, Diane asked about pricing and implementation logistics. Ethan handled these questions with the perfect balance of flexibility and clarity. We'd prepared a tiered proposal that could scale with Meridian's needs, starting with a department-level implementation and expanding company-wide as results proved successful. As the meeting concluded, Diane thanked us for our time. "This is certainly interesting technology. We're evaluating several options, but your understanding of our specific challenges is compelling. We'll be in touch next week with our decision." In the elevator heading down, Ethan could barely contain his excitement. "Did you see their reactions when you showed the automation workflow? They were practically salivating." "Let's not celebrate prematurely," I cautioned, though internally I shared his optimism. "We're still competing against established vendors with proven track records, none of whom have a former insider advocating for their solution," Ethan countered. "Your knowledge of their systems gives us a massive advantage." Back at DataVision's office, the team greeted us eagerly, hungry for details. We recounted the meeting, emphasizing the positive reception while acknowledging nothing was certain yet. "If we land Meridian," Sarah noted, "we'll need to accelerate development on the enterprise security features and expand our support team," added Miguel from operations. "A client that size will expect dedicated resources." The potential deal represented more than just revenue. It would be validation, proof that our vision had merit. For me personally, it carried additional significance, vindication after months of doubt. 3 excruciating days passed before Jessica texted, "Diane wants another meeting, tomorrow 2 p.m. Bring a technical team." The follow-up meeting involved deeper technical discussions with Meridian's IT security team and database administrators. We addressed their concerns about data sovereignty, encryption protocols, and API integrations. Sarah handled the technical questions brilliantly, while I focused on explaining how our solution would integrate with their existing workflows. At the meeting's conclusion, Diane asked everyone except me to step out briefly. Once we were alone, she leaned forward, fingers interlaced on the conference table. Off the record, Ryan. You understand our systems better than half my current team. Marcus Fletcher left quite a mess, and we're still uncovering problematic practices. I maintained, a neutral expression though vindication flowed through me. I'm aware there were certain methodological shortcuts taken during my tenure. That's diplomatically put, she said with a wry smile. Here's my situation. We need modernization badly, but my team is resistant to change. I need this implementation to succeed, which means I need someone who understands both Meridian's idiosyncrasies and your platform's capabilities. That's precisely why Ethan and I believe this partnership would be valuable, I replied carefully. I'm prepared to move forward with a 6-month pilot, department-wide, she stated, but on one condition. You personally oversee the implementation. I want you as our primary contact, on-site 3 days a week during the transition. The request blindsided me. That's substantial involvement. It's non-negotiable, Diane replied. Your institutional knowledge combined with your understanding of the solution makes you uniquely qualified. Jessica trusts you, which means I trust you. Back at Data Vision, Ethan immediately grasped the strategic value of Diane's condition. This is perfect. You'll essentially be embedded with them, identifying additional pain points we can address, positioning us for expansion beyond the initial department. It means dividing my time when we're already stretched thin, I pointed out. We'll adjust, Ethan insisted. This contract would extend our runway by at least 8 months. More importantly, having Meridian as a reference client will transform our fundraising prospects. We formally accepted Meridian's offer the following day. The contract included a 6-month pilot with the analytics department, with options to expand company-wide pending successful implementation. The deal value, $450,000 for the pilot alone, would transform DataVision's financial outlook. 2 weeks later, I found myself back at Meridian, not as an employee, but as a vendor with a temporary office on the executive floor. The irony wasn't lost on me as I set up my laptop in a space 3 times larger than my former cubicle, with actual windows and a door that closed. Word of my return spread quickly. During my first day, familiar faces appeared at my door with transparent excuses to assess my new role. Some seemed genuinely pleased to see me. Others barely concealed their confusion or resentment at my apparent success. Trevor from accounting stopped by around noon. So, the startup didn't fail after all, he remarked, leaning against my doorframe. Not yet, I replied with deliberate lightness. Still plenty of time for catastrophe. He chuckled, seemingly unsure whether to be impressed or suspicious. Heard, your company's solution is going to revolutionize our reporting processes. That true? That's the plan. Interested in a demonstration? The implementation process began with intensive discovery sessions. I worked closely with Jessica and the analytics team to map current workflows, identify pain points, and configure Analyt IQ to address their specific needs. Sarah and our technical team supported remotely, making real-time adjustments to the YA platform based on feedback. The most challenging aspect wasn't technical, but cultural. Years of inefficient processes had become ingrained in Meridian's operations. Some team members resisted the changes, clinging to familiar spreadsheets and manual processes despite their obvious limitations. This is normal, Diane reassured me, during our weekly check-in. People fear what they don't understand. Your job isn't just implementation, it's change management. She was right. I began holding informal lunch and learn sessions, demonstrating how Analyt IQ could simplify tasks that previously consumed days of tedious work. Gradually, resistance softened as early adopters shared success stories. Jessica proved invaluable as an internal champion, encouraging her colleagues to embrace the new system. Remember how we used to spend 3 days reconciling the Henderson account? She asked during a team meeting. Ryan just showed me how to do it in 30 minutes with Analyte IQ. By the second month of implementation, usage metrics showed steady adoption across the department. When the first quarterly reporting cycle arrived, the true test of our solution, Analyte IQ performed exactly as promised, reducing 3 weeks of preparation to just 4 days. Diane was ecstatic. "This exceeds our expectations," she told me during our review meeting. "My team is actually leaving the office at reasonable hours instead of sleeping under their desks during quarter end." The successful quarterly report marked a turning point. Skeptics became advocates, and word spread to other departments. The CFO personally visited our floor to understand how we'd achieved such dramatic efficiency improvements. Meanwhile, at DataVision, our fortunes were improving dramatically. The Meridian contract had stabilized our finances, and Ethan had successfully leveraged our new reference client to secure meetings with other enterprise prospects. 2 additional clients signed on, attracted by our successful implementation at a respected firm like Meridian. More significantly, a venture capital firm that had previously declined to invest reached out to restart discussions. "Your Meridian case study changed the conversation," Ethan told me excitedly. "They're talking about leading a $10 million Series A round at a $40 million valuation." 3 months into the Meridian implementation, my professional life had achieved a surreal duality. 3 days at Meridian as the face of DataVision, 2 days at our Brooklyn office working on product development and strategy. The arrangement was exhausting but deeply satisfying as both entities thrived through the partnership. During month 4, Diane invited me to present our results to Meridian's executive committee. The stakes were enormous. This presentation would determine whether our solution would expand beyond the analytics department to the entire company. I prepared meticulously, compiling success metrics, user testimonials, and financial impact assessments. The potential company-wide contract would be worth millions annually and cement DataVision's reputation in the enterprise market. The night before the presentation, Jessica asked me to join her for a drink at the bar where we used to decompress. After particularly grueling workdays under Marcus, "To full circles," she toasted, raising her glass. "You walked out of here a pariah and returned a conquering hero." "Hardly a hero," I demurred. "Just someone with good timing and better friends." "Don't undersell yourself," she insisted. "Your solution works because you understand both sides of the equation, the corporate reality and the technological possibility." "That's rare." Her words sparked an uncomfortable question that had been lurking in my subconscious. "Do you ever regret not joining me when I left? You could have been part of building DataVision." Jessica considered the question seriously. "Sometimes," she admitted, "especially when you first started showing success. But honestly, I'm not a risk-taker like you, Ryan. I need stability." "Besides," she added with a slight smile, "things are changing here under Diane. It feels like a different company." "She's impressive," I agreed. "Very different management style from Marcus." "Speaking of management changes," Jessica said casually, swirling her drink, "have you heard the latest? After tomorrow's executive presentation, Diane's announcing a significant reorganization. The analytics department is being elevated to a division with expanded responsibilities and headcount." "That's fantastic," I replied. "She deserves the recognition." "Here's the interesting part," Jessica continued. "She needs a division director, someone who understands both the technical aspects and the business applications, someone who can bridge the gap between what's possible and what's practical." I nearly choked on my drink as the implication became clear. "Are you saying—" "She hasn't discussed specific names publicly," Jessica clarified, "but we've had several private conversations about leadership qualities. Your name has come up repeatedly." "That's complicated," I managed. "I'm committed to DataVision. We're just hitting our stride." "I thought you might say that," Jessica nodded. Which is why I shouldn't tell you that Diane is considering a strategic partnership angle. Meridian has an investment arm that occasionally takes positions in promising technology vendors. My mind raced with implications. A division director. Role at Meridian would be prestigious and lucrative, far beyond my previous position. But data vision was my passion, the risk that had defined the past year of my life. The idea of returning to corporate life, even in an executive capacity, felt like abandoning a mission half completed. Yet a strategic investment could accelerate DataVision's growth while strengthening our relationship with a key client. It was a scenario I hadn't anticipated when I left Meridian carrying my belongings in a cardboard box, the subject of whispers and mockery. The executive presentation is tomorrow, Jessica reminded me gently. Maybe focus on that first, then see what opportunities emerge. I nodded, finishing my drink as my thoughts churned with possibilities. Tomorrow I would stand before Meridian's executive committee, the same people who had barely noticed my existence during my previous tenure. Now, they would evaluate my solution, my company, my vision, and perhaps, though I scarcely dared acknowledge it, they would evaluate me for a role I couldn't have imagined when I walked out their doors 11 months earlier. The universe, it seemed, had a peculiar sense of humor, and perhaps a sense of justice as well. The morning of the executive presentation arrived with a mixture of anticipation and surreal disbelief. 12 months earlier, I'd occupied a windowless cubicle on the 4th floor, invisible to the executives who would now evaluate my solution and, potentially, my future. I arrived early to prepare the conference room, meticulously testing the presentation setup. The cherrywood table gleamed under recessed lighting, 16 leather chairs positioned around it for Meridian's senior leadership. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Manhattan, a visual reminder of the stakes involved. Diane entered as I was adjusting the projector. "Ready for the lion's den?" she asked with characteristic directness. "As ready as possible," I replied, straightening my tie. I'd purchased a new suit for the occasion. Nothing flashy, but significantly more polished than my former analyst wardrobe or the casual attire of startup life. "They'll be skeptical," she warned. "It's their job to be skeptical. But the numbers speak for themselves. Just stick to the results and you'll be fine." The executives arrived precisely at 10 a.m., a procession of tailored suits and measured smiles. CEO Lawrence Blackwell led the group, a legendary figure I'd glimpsed only at annual company meetings during my previous tenure. He was accompanied by the CFO, CTO, and division heads from across the organization. Diane made introductions, describing me as the architect of our analytics transformation. The characterization felt generous but strategic. It established me as a solution provider rather than a former employee who had rejected Meridian. I recognized subtle shifts in the executives' expressions as they processed my unusual trajectory, from mid-level analyst to strategic vendor in just a year. Their curiosity was palpable, assessment ongoing. "Mr. Mitchell," Blackwell began once everyone was seated, "I understand your solution has dramatically improved our quarterly reporting process. I'm interested in the measurable impact, the directness." His question was a gift. It allowed me to immediately focus on concrete results rather than theoretical capabilities. I launched into our prepared analytics, highlighting the 70% reduction in preparation time, 42% decrease in error rates, and projected annual savings of $1.2 million for the analytics department alone. These efficiency improvements have material, financial impact, I explained, transitioning to a slide showing before and after metrics. But the more significant value comes from accelerated decision-making. Your leadership team now receives critical insights weeks earlier than previously possible, allowing faster responses to market changes. The CFO leaned forward, clearly engaged. "Can you quantify the scalability? If we were to implement it across all divisions, what would resource requirements look like?" This was the opening I'd hoped for. I shared our tiered implementation strategy, including projected timelines, resource allocations, and ROI analysis for enterprise-wide deployment. The questions grew increasingly specific and technical, ranging from data security to integration with legacy systems. Throughout the exchange, I noticed Blackwell studying me with particular intensity. Unlike his colleagues who focused primarily on the solution, he seemed equally interested in my personal evolution from employee to entrepreneur to potential partner. After I addressed the final technical question, Blackwell spoke again. "Mr. Mitchell, you've clearly demonstrated the value of your solution. What interests me equally is your perspective on Meridian, having seen us from both inside and outside. What do we do well, and where are we vulnerable?" The question was unexpected and potentially treacherous. Too harsh a critique could offend. Too gentle an assessment would lack credibility. I chose candor, tempered with respect. "Meridian excels at client relationship management and market positioning," I began. "Your brand integrity and client retention are industry-leading. However, operational silos create inefficiencies that competitors are increasingly exploiting. Your data architecture remains fragmented despite significant investment, limiting your ability to derive actionable intelligence quickly." A moment of silence followed as Blackwell considered my response. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Refreshingly direct. Most vendors tell us only what they think we want to hear." "You're not paying for flattery," I replied. "You're paying for results." The comment earned a rare smile from Blackwell. "Indeed we are. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Mitchell. Diane will discuss next steps with you." As the executives filed out, several stopped to ask additional questions or exchange cards. The CTO specifically requested a follow-up meeting to discuss integration with their customer relationship management systems, a promising sign for expansion beyond the analytics department. When only Diane and I remained, she allowed herself a satisfied smile. "That couldn't have gone better. Lawrence rarely engages that directly with vendors." That final question caught me off guard, I admitted. "It was a test," she explained. "Lawrence values people who tell him the truth, not what they think he wants to hear. You passed." She gathered her materials, pausing before adding, "He's asked to speak with you privately tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, his office." The request was unexpected and somewhat intimidating. "Any insight on the agenda?" "Several possibilities," she replied cryptically. "Prepare for anything." That evening, I debriefed Ethan via video call, sharing the presentation's success and the unexpected meeting with Blackwell. "This is huge," Ethan exclaimed, his excitement palpable even through the screen. "A private meeting with the CEO could mean enterprise-wide adoption, which would transform our projections." "It could," I agreed cautiously. "But Jessica mentioned something else yesterday that has me thinking." I explained the rumored reorganization and the potential division director role, along with the possibility of Meridian's investment arm taking a position in data vision. Ethan's expression shifted from excitement to thoughtful calculation. "Strategic. Investment would accelerate our growth tremendously," he acknowledged. "But you in a leadership role at Meridian creates interesting possibilities and challenges." "It's a hypothetical at this point," I cautioned. "Maybe," Ethan conceded, "but it's worth gaming out. If they offer you a position, what would that mean for your role with us?" The question had been dominating my thoughts since Jessica's revelation. Best case scenario, I could serve as a bridge between the companies, maintaining my equity stake and strategic input while transitioning operational responsibilities. And worst case? They demand exclusivity, forcing a choice. Ethan nodded, slowly. "We always knew your unique value included your knowledge of Meridian. It's not surprising they recognize that value too." He paused before adding, "Whatever happens tomorrow, remember that you built something valuable here." Your equity stake has real meaning now. The conversation left me contemplating identity and loyalty. Was I primarily an entrepreneur who had temporarily stepped back into corporate waters? Or was I an executive who had briefly explored entrepreneurship before returning to my natural habitat? The answer wasn't as clear as I would have liked. Sleep proved elusive that night as I mentally prepared for every possible scenario with Blackwell. By morning, I'd resigned myself to navigating the conversation as it unfolded, rather than attempting to predict its direction. Meridian's executive floor operated on different atmospheric conditions than the rest of the building. Quieter, more rarefied, populated by assistants moving with purposeful efficiency. Blackwell's assistant, a poised woman named Vanessa, greeted me with professional warmth and offered coffee while I waited. Precisely at 9, she escorted me into Blackwell's office, a corner suite whose windows framed the city like a carefully composed photograph. Modern art adorned walls painted a subtle gray, while a massive desk of polished walnut dominated the space. Blackwell stood as I entered, gesturing toward a seating area rather than the more formal arrangement across his desk. "Mr. Mitchell, thank you for making time," he began, the formality almost humorous given the power dynamics at play. "Your presentation yesterday was enlightening." "I appreciate the opportunity," I replied, accepting the offered seat. "Your team's engagement suggests genuine interest in modernization." "More than interest, necessity," he corrected. "Our industry faces unprecedented disruption. Adaptability is survival." He studied me for a moment before continuing. "Your career trajectory intrigues me. Not many leave Meridian for startups, particularly when abandoning seniority and security." The observation felt like both a question and judgment. I chose honesty. I left because I saw technological possibilities that couldn't be realized within Meridian's structure at that time. The decision involved significant risk, but also potential for greater impact and greater reward, he noted. "I understand your equity position in data vision is substantial." The statement confirmed my suspicion that Blackwell had thoroughly researched both me and data vision before this meeting. "Equity was part of the compensation package," I acknowledged, "though its value remains theoretical until we achieve liquidity." Blackwell nodded, seemingly satisfied with my candor. "I've reviewed the analytics department's transformation under your solution. The efficiency gains are undeniable. Diane speaks highly of both your technology and your implementation approach. Her leadership has been crucial to the success," I noted. "Change management requires internal champions." "Indeed." Blackwell leaned forward slightly. "Which brings me to the purpose of our meeting. Meridian is undergoing strategic reorganization. We're elevating the analytics function to divisional status with expanded scope and authority." Diane mentioned the reorganization, I acknowledged. "It's a forward-thinking move. The division requires leadership with both technical expertise and business acumen," he continued. "Someone who understands Meridian's culture but brings a fresh perspective. Someone with proven ability to drive meaningful transformation." The conversation's direction was becoming clear, yet Blackwell seemed intentionally measured in his approach, carefully assessing my reactions. "That's a challenging combination to find," I offered neutrally. "Yes," he agreed, "which is why I'm interested in unconventional solutions." He paused before continuing more directly. "I'd like you to consider becoming Meridian's division director for analytics and insights." Despite Jessica's warning, the actual offer momentarily stunned me. "I'm honored by your consideration," I managed, "though it presents obvious complications given my role at Data Vision." "Complications I've considered," Blackwell assured me, "which is why this wouldn't be a conventional employment arrangement. Meridian's investment arm is prepared to acquire a significant minority stake in Data Vision, providing capital for your company's growth while securing our access to your technology." The proposal was simultaneously elegant and disorienting. "Oh, Solution that potentially served both organizations' interests while elevating my position beyond anything I'd imagined when leaving Meridian a year earlier. The structure would allow you to maintain your founder status and equity position, Blackwell continued, while assuming divisional leadership here through a specialized partnership agreement. You'd effectively bridge both worlds, corporate and entrepreneurial. An intriguing structure, I acknowledged, mind racing with implications. What time frame are you considering? Implementation within 60 days, assuming agreement on terms. Diane would transition to Chief Operating Officer, creating the leadership vacancy. He studied me carefully before adding, I realize this requires careful consideration, particularly discussions with your co-founder. Take the time you need, within reason. We'd need an indication of interest by next week to proceed with structuring. The remainder of our meeting covered broad strokes of the proposed arrangement: compensation structure, reporting relationships, division scope, and integration plans for DataVision's technology. Throughout the exchange, I maintained professional composure while internally processing the extraordinary reversal of circumstances. As our meeting concluded, Blackwell offered a final observation. Career trajectories rarely follow linear paths, Mr. Mitchell. The most valuable leaders often emerge from unconventional journeys. Your departure last year may ultimately prove beneficial for both you and Meridian. The understatement almost made me smile. From office pariah to division director in 12 months, with my failed startup, now a strategic investment target. The universe's sense of irony remained intact. Leaving Meridian's offices that afternoon felt surreal, my mind crowded with possibilities, implications, and decisions looming on the horizon. I needed perspective beyond my own conflicted thoughts, which led me to an unexpected destination. Sarah Chen, DataVision's lead engineer, lived in a converted industrial loft in Brooklyn's Dumbo neighborhood. As the technical heart of our company, her perspective on Meridian's proposal carried particular weight. I found her at a neighborhood cafe, laptop open amid scattered papers covered with architectural diagrams. "This is unexpected," she remarked as I joined her, pushing aside her work. "Mid-afternoon coffee isn't your usual style." "Unusual circumstances," I replied, briefly summarizing my meeting with Blackwell and the proposed arrangement. Sarah listened, intently, her analytical mind visibly processing implications. When I finished, she sat back with a thoughtful expression. "That's quite a plot twist." "That's one way to describe it," I agreed. "I'm struggling to evaluate it objectively. Your perspective would help." She considered it for a moment. "From a technical standpoint, Meridian's investment solves our runway concerns and potentially accelerates development. Having you embedded there maintains our competitive advantage in understanding enterprise needs." She paused before adding, "But this isn't really about the business logic, is it?" "Not entirely," I admitted. "You're wondering if accepting means you're abandoning the startup dream, retreating to corporate safety after all." Her directness was refreshing amidst my circling thoughts. "Something like that," I acknowledged. When I left Meridian, it was a definitive break from that world. This feels like, I don't know, vindication mixed with compromise. Sarah smiled slightly. "You're overthinking this. Success doesn't have to match the specific vision you had at the beginning. DataVision's mission was always to transform enterprise analytics. This arrangement potentially accelerates that mission while changing the structure of how we accomplish it." Her pragmatism cut through my philosophical quandary. "So you wouldn't see it as selling out?" "I see it as evolution," she corrected. "Startups pivot constantly. Sometimes that includes the business model and leadership structure, not just product. Features." She leaned forward. "The real question is, can you be effective and fulfilled straddling both worlds?" That question followed me to my next critical conversation, with Ethan at DataVision's office that evening. I found him alone, reviewing financial projections as most of the team had departed hours earlier. I relayed Blackwell's proposal in detail, including the potential investment structure. Ethan listened without interruption, occasionally making notes but offering no reaction until I'd finished. "Well," he said finally, "this certainly accelerates our timeline." "You don't seem surprised," I observed. "Surprised by the specifics, not the general direction," he clarified. "We built DataVision to transform enterprise analytics. Having our solution championed by a division director at a major financial institution? That's the distribution we couldn't buy at any price." His practical assessment mirrored Sarah's, yet I still struggled with the personal dimension. "It means splitting my focus at a critical growth stage. It means expanding our influence through institutional adoption," Ethan countered. "Your value to DataVision has always included your understanding of enterprise needs and culture. This formalizes and amplifies that value." "You're unusually comfortable with this," I noted. Ethan smiled. "Ryan, when we started this company, we faced 90% odds of failure. Now we're discussing terms of strategic investment from a major corporation with our technology positioned for enterprise-wide adoption. That's victory, not compromise." His perspective shifted something in my thinking, a reframing of success beyond the stereotypical startup narrative of disruption from outside. Perhaps transformation could be equally powerful from within. "There's another angle to consider," Ethan added. "Your elevation to division director creates a powerful customer reference for us. Our co-founder became their division head is a compelling testimony to the value of our solution." As our conversation progressed into practical considerations, board representation, operational adjustments, client messaging, my initial conceptual struggle gave way to strategic planning. Together, we outlined a framework that would preserve DataVision's innovation culture while leveraging Meridian's resources and reach. By the time I left our office near midnight, the path forward had crystallized. I would accept Blackwell's offer, with specific conditions ensuring DataVision's independence and my continued equity participation. The arrangement wasn't what I'd envisioned when leaving Meridian a year earlier, but it potentially offered something more valuable: impact at institutional scale. The following morning, I requested a meeting with Blackwell to discuss terms. His assistant scheduled it for that afternoon, an urgency that confirmed the strategic importance Meridian placed on the arrangement. Our negotiation was respectful but thorough. I outlined specific conditions. DataVision would maintain operational independence while accepting strategic investment. My division at Meridian would serve as a reference implementation but not dictate product direction. And my equity position and board seat at DataVision would remain intact. Blackwell countered with reasonable requests: exclusivity within the financial services sector for 12 months, prioritized feature development for Meridian-specific use cases, and quarterly alignment between my division strategy and DataVision's roadmap. By meeting's end, we'd reached preliminary agreement, subject to legal structuring and board approvals. Blackwell extended his hand with genuine satisfaction. "I believe this partnership will prove transformative for both organizations, and personally gratifying for you, I imagine." "It's a unique arrangement," I acknowledged, accepting his handshake. "Life often presents opportunities through unexpected channels," he observed. "Your departure last year created the conditions for your return in a more impactful capacity." As I prepared to leave his office, a final question arose. "Out of curiosity, did you know about my situation when I was an analyst here?" Blackwell considered the question. "I was aware of your departure. Unusual exits are flagged to executive leadership. The circumstances weren't detailed, but I recall noting that Marcus Fletcher had dismissed your potential rather summarily." A slight smile crossed his face. "I make a habit of watching those who prove conventional wisdom wrong. They often reveal possibilities others miss." 1 week later, the formal announcements were made. Meridian's strategic investment in DataVision, the elevation of analytics to divisional status, and my appointment as division director. The press release described the arrangement as an innovative, partnership bridging corporate scale with entrepreneurial agility. The morning of the announcement, I arrived at Meridian to find my new office, corner suite, 35th floor, with views that stretched to the horizon. On my desk sat a small package with a note from Jessica. For your triumphant return. Never doubted you for a minute. Inside was a sleek business card holder engraved with my name and new title, Ryan Mitchell, Division Director, Analytics and Insights. As I prepared for my first executive team meeting, I couldn't help reflecting on the journey, from anonymous analyst to ridiculed departure to returning leader. The cardboard box I'd carried out of the building a year earlier had symbolized failure in many eyes. Now I returned with authority that extended beyond corporate hierarchy to include founder status in a rising technology company. Success rarely follows predictable paths. Sometimes leaving the safety of the familiar is necessary to discover possibilities, invisible from within. And sometimes, the greatest vindication isn't proving critics wrong. It's creating value they never imagined possible. My phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Ready for your first day as a corporate executive again? Smiled as I typed my response. Ready to transform from the inside out. The revolution continues, just with better funding. Slipping the phone into my pocket, I straightened my tie and headed toward the boardroom where Meridian's executive team awaited their newest member, the once dismissed analyst who'd returned as architect of their digital future. 6 months into my tenure as division director, the transformation at Meridian exceeded even our ambitious projections. What began as a departmental efficiency initiative had evolved into a company-wide digital revolution, with my division serving as both proving ground and innovation hub. My first executive team meeting had been an exercise in controlled confidence. Seated around the mahogany boardroom table were leaders with decades more experience at Meridian, many of whom had never interacted with me during my analyst days. Their initial skepticism was thinly veiled. The unconventional newcomer with a startup background required verification before acceptance into their ranks. Lawrence Blackwell had masterfully managed that transition, introducing me not as a returning employee but as a strategic technology partner, assuming divisional leadership. Ryan brings a unique perspective as both enterprise veteran and technology innovator, he'd explained. His division will drive analytics modernization while maintaining our institutional strengths. The careful framing had granted me provisional credibility, but actual results would determine my standing. Those results came quickly as Analyt IQ's implementation expanded beyond the analytics department to trading operations, risk management, and client services. Each successful deployment strengthened my position while validating Meridian's investment in data vision. Within 4 months, our technology had delivered $3.7 million in documented efficiency gains and enabled strategic capabilities previously impossible with legacy systems. Executive skepticism transformed to active interest, then outright enthusiasm as competitive advantages materialized. Today marked a significant milestone. My first formal strategy presentation to Meridian's board of directors. My division's success had warranted this unusual invitation for a relatively new executive, an opportunity to outline our 2-year roadmap directly to the governance level. Nervous? Jessica asked as we reviewed presentation materials in my office. Her promotion to department head within my division had been among my first organizational changes, long overdue recognition of her capabilities. Appropriately prepared, I replied with a smile that acknowledged the understatement. Presenting to Meridian's board, composed of financial industry titans and institutional investors, represented a pinnacle of corporate visibility I couldn't have imagined during my analyst days. They're going to love the predictive trading module, Jessica assured me, referencing our newest capability. Early test results are off the charts. The feature she mentioned represented the most ambitious application of our technology, an AI-driven system that identified market patterns too subtle for human analysts to detect, generating trading recommendations with remarkable accuracy during pilot testing. The compliance aspects will face scrutiny, I cautioned. Algorithmic trading raises regulatory questions, especially with our semi-autonomous decision pathways. That's why we've structured the phased implementation, she reminded me. Augmented decision support before any automated execution. The regulatory affairs review was comprehensive. Her confidence buoyed mine as we finalized materials for the 2-hour PM presentation. The board meeting was being held in Meridian's ceremonial boardroom on the 50th floor, a space I'd never entered during my previous tenure, reserved for the most consequential corporate deliberations. As Jessica departed to oversee final preparation of our demonstration, my phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. Big day for both fronts. Morgan Stanley's term sheet arrived. Call when you can. The message referenced our parallel transformations. While I guided Meridian's analytics evolution, Ethan was leading DataVision's explosive growth. Meridian's strategic investment had catalyzed interest from other financial institutions, with Morgan Stanley now offering an additional funding round at a $120 million valuation, triple our worth just 6 months earlier. I made a quick call to Ethan, who answered immediately. Perfect timing, he greeted me. Just finished the first review with our counsel. How does it look? I asked, closing my office door for privacy. Very favorable terms, lower dilution than expected, minimal board representation requirements. They're essentially buying into the Meridian partnership model we pioneered. Any potential conflicts with our Meridian arrangements? This question reflected my perpetual balancing act, maintaining DataVision's independence while honoring our special relationship with my employer. Actually, the opposite, Ethan explained. They view the Meridian implementation as validation and are explicitly supportive of expanding that model to other financial institutions. The exclusivity period in our Meridian agreement expires next month anyway. Blackwell will want the right of first refusal on capability enhancements, I noted. Already addressed in the term sheet, Ethan assured me. Meridian maintains preferred partner status with 30-day advance access to new features. Morgan Stanley seems comfortable with that arrangement. The intricate dance between corporate stakeholders had become our new normal, complex but manageable with careful attention to relationships and expectations. What once would have seemed like oppressive bureaucracy now represented strategic opportunity at institutional scale. This investment accelerates our enterprise security development, Ethan continued. We could potentially pursue government contracts by Q2 next year. The expansion possibilities were exhilarating, yet remained grounded in the foundation we'd built together. Excellent timing with today's board presentation, I observed. Additional market validation strengthens our strategic narrative. After concluding the call with promises of a more detailed discussion that evening, I refocused on immediate priorities. The board presentation represented a crucial inflection point for my division's future, and by extension, DataVision's continued integration within Meridian. At precisely 1:45 p.m., I arrived at the executive antechamber outside the boardroom, where my team had assembled our technical demonstration. Jessica confirmed all systems were functioning properly, while our compliance officer reviewed regulatory disclaimers one final time. Lawrence Blackwell approached from the corridor, impeccable in a charcoal suit that projected understated authority. Ryan, a moment before we begin? We stepped aside for privacy. The board has reviewed your preliminary materials with considerable interest, he informed me, particularly the predictive analytics applications for trading operations. They'll have questions about scalability and regulatory framework. We've prepared comprehensive responses on both dimensions, I assured him. Good. He paused briefly before adding, There's something else you should know. Marcus Fletcher is consulting for Wentworth Financial. They've announced development of competitive technology in this space. The revelation was unexpected. Marcus, my former boss whose mockery had accompanied my departure, was now positioned as a potential competitor. The symmetry seemed almost scripted, though certainly not by my design. "Does that affect today's objectives?" I asked neutrally. "Quite the opposite," Blackwell replied. "It validates our first-mover advantage and justifies accelerated deployment. The board will be particularly attentive to our competitive moat." The information recontextualized certain aspects of my presentation, emphasizing the proprietary elements that differentiated our solution from potential market alternatives. Mentally adjusting emphasis points, I thanked Blackwell for the insight as we were called into the boardroom. Meridian's boardroom projected gravitas through understated luxury, richly paneled walls, subtle lighting, and a massive oval table of polished mahogany. 12 board members occupied high-backed leather chairs, with additional seating along the perimeter for executive leadership. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Manhattan, a reminder of the scale at which these leaders operated. Chairman Victoria Harrington, former Treasury Secretary and current financial industry eminence, called the meeting to order, with efficient precision. After brief introductions, Blackwell framed my presentation with contextual remarks about Meridian's digital transformation initiative. Ryan Mitchell's division represents our most successful technology integration to date, he explained. The analytics capabilities developed under his leadership have delivered measurable competitive advantages across multiple business lines. Today's presentation outlines the strategic roadmap for expanding these capabilities. As I took position at the presentation podium, the surreal quality of the moment briefly overwhelmed me. 2 years earlier, I'd inhabited a windowless cubicle designing reports few people read. Now I addressed financial industry leaders as a peer, outlining technology that was transforming their institution from within. Meridian's competitive landscape is evolving rapidly, I began, deliberately embracing my identity as a company insider rather than a technology vendor. Our analytics transformation has established significant advantages in operational efficiency and market intelligence. The roadmap I'm presenting today extends these advantages through predictive capabilities that fundamentally alter our decision. Velocity. For the next 30 minutes, I outlined our strategic vision, from current deployments to near-term enhancements to long-range possibilities. The presentation balanced technical specifics with business impacts, quantifying ROI while emphasizing capabilities unique to our approach. Throughout the presentation, I noticed board members' attentiveness increasing during discussions of competitive differentiation. Blackwell's pre-meeting insight about Marcus Fletcher's activities with Wentworth Financial had been valuable context. The board was particularly engaged by our barriers to replication. When the formal presentation concluded, Chairman Harrington opened the floor for questions. The first came from Douglas Werner, former CEO of a global investment bank and known technology skeptic. "Your predictive trading module shows impressive results in controlled testing," he acknowledged. "What assurances can you provide regarding regulatory compliance as capabilities expand?" Algorithms making trading decisions raise significant oversight questions. The question addressed precisely the concern I'd anticipated. Our implementation follows a 3-phase approach specifically designed around regulatory considerations, I explained, outlining our graduated deployment methodology that maintained human oversight while leveraging increasingly sophisticated algorithmic insights. We've established a dedicated compliance team that partners with development from initial concept through deployment, I added. Regular briefings with regulatory authorities have informed our approach, ensuring transparency as capabilities evolve. Werner seemed satisfied, making brief notes before yielding to others. Questions continued for nearly 40 minutes, ranging from technical architecture to talent recruitment to competitive landscape. The board demonstrated sophisticated understanding of both opportunities and challenges, engaging thoughtfully rather than superficially. The final question came from Harrington herself. "Your division straddles an interesting position between traditional financial services and emerging technology. How do you balance maintaining Meridian's institutional strengths while driving innovation that often requires disrupting established processes? The question went to the heart of my unique role: bridge between corporate stability and entrepreneurial agility. We've developed what we call contained disruption, I explained. Innovation occurs within bounded environments where implications are thoroughly understood before wider deployment. This approach maintains institutional stability while creating space for transformative change. I elaborated on our methodology, which had emerged organically from my dual perspectives as corporate executive and startup founder. The most valuable innovations often emerge at the intersection of established expertise and fresh perspective. My division deliberately cultivates that intersection through organizational design and talent development. Harrington nodded with apparent approval. An enlightened approach. Thank you for a comprehensive presentation. As the board transitioned to their next agenda item, Blackwell escorted me from the room, pausing in the corridor to offer assessment. Exceptionally well received, he confirmed. Harrington rarely engages that directly with divisional presentations. The questions were substantive, I noted. They've clearly done their homework on our technology. Your division represents significant strategic investment, Blackwell reminded me. The board's engagement reflects both the opportunity and their confidence in your leadership. His phone buzzed with a message, which he checked briefly before adding, "We have board dinner this evening. They've specifically requested your attendance, unusual for a divisional leader. 7 o'clock at the Morgan Club." The invitation represented another milestone in my corporate rehabilitation, from departed analyst to dinner companion of Meridian's governance leadership. The irony wasn't lost on me as I returned to my office to debrief with my team. Jessica was waiting, eager for assessment. How did they respond to the predictive module demonstration? Very positively, I confirmed. Particularly the compliance framework we established. Their questions focused on scalability and competitive differentiation. Anything unexpected? I hesitated before sharing Blackwell's pre-meeting information. Marcus Fletcher is consulting for Wentworth Financial on competitive technology. Jessica's eyebrows rose. Marcus, in the analytics space, his technical knowledge was always superficial at best. He knows Meridian's operations intimately, I pointed out. That institutional knowledge has value, even with limited technical expertise. Still, the timing seems... She paused, searching for the appropriate characterization. Poetic? I suggested with a slight smile. I was thinking desperate, she countered. He's been struggling since leaving Meridian. This feels like an attempt to leverage his only remaining asset, insider knowledge of our operations. Her assessment aligned with industry rumors I'd heard through executive networks. Marcus had apparently departed Meridian under uncomfortable circumstances, his management practices exposed during the cleanup of departmental irregularities. Several positions had proven more challenging than expected, with his reputation for results now tarnished by revelation of his methods. In any case, I concluded, it validates our accelerated implementation timeline. The board was particularly interested in our competitive moat. As Jessica departed to share feedback with our technical teams, I turned to another significant task, updating Ethan on these developments. Our relationship had evolved into a unique partnership. While he managed DataVision's expanding client base and product development, I guided institutional adoption within Meridian while providing strategic insight on enterprise needs. Our nightly calls had become a fixture in both our calendars, an opportunity to align our parallel but complementary paths. Tonight's conversation would cover both the board presentation and Morgan Stanley's investment term sheet, decisions that would shape our next phase of growth. Before initiating that call, I paused at my office window overlooking Manhattan's skyline, now bathed in late afternoon sunlight. The view represented more than corporate status. It symbolized perspective gained through an unconventional journey from cubicle to corner office, from employee to entrepreneur to corporate innovator. Phone buzzed with an unexpected notification, an industry news alert mentioning my name. Curious, I opened the article from Financial Technology Monthly. Meridian Analytics Division outperforms industry benchmarks, led by former startup founder Ryan Mitchell. Division delivers revolutionary capabilities. The article detailed Meridian's technology transformation, highlighting my division's contributions to the company's recent market share gains and improved quarterly performance. It positioned our approach as a potential model for traditional financial institutions seeking to integrate entrepreneurial innovation methodologies. More surprising was a quoted statement from a familiar name. Meridian's analytics capabilities have advanced significantly under Mitchell's leadership, notes Marcus Fletcher, financial technology consultant. Their integrated approach represents serious competitive advantage in the current landscape. The public acknowledgement from my former boss, the man who had mockingly dismissed my startup ambitions, represented a final form of vindication I hadn't sought but found surprisingly meaningful. Marcus had been wrong about my potential, about DataVision's viability, about the possibilities that existed beyond Meridian's traditional approaches. Now he publicly acknowledged that miscalculation. As I prepared for the board dinner that evening, selecting a suit that projected confident professionalism, I reflected on the winding path that had led to this moment. Leaving Meridian had been necessary to discover capabilities invisible from within. Returning had enabled implementation at scale impossible from without. The journey's value lay not in proving critics wrong, but in creating possibilities they couldn't imagine. My phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. Just saw the industry coverage. From office pariah to industry innovator in 24 months. Not bad for a risky career move, huh? I smiled at his characterization as I typed my response. The risk was always the point. Sometimes you have to leave to find what was missing, then return to implement what you've found. His reply came quickly. Philosophical tonight? Save some? Wisdom for our call after your fancy board dinner? Morgan Stanley has some interesting ideas about government sector applications. The continuous evolution of possibilities reflected the fundamental truth I'd discovered. Success rarely follows linear paths. The greatest innovations often require departure from established patterns, even when that departure invites mockery or doubt. The courage to pursue alternative perspectives sometimes leads back to transformed versions of familiar territory. As I gathered my materials and prepared to join Meridian's board for dinner, I reflected on the journey's unexpected symmetry. I had left carrying a cardboard box amid whispers and derision. I returned carrying insights and innovations amid respect and partnership. The physical space was identical, but everything else, including me, had fundamentally changed. The experience has taught me that sometimes leaving is necessary for growth, that failure is often a disguised opportunity, and that success may arrive through unexpected channels. Most importantly, I'd learned that vindication comes not from proving critics wrong, but from creating value they never imagined possible. As evening settled over Manhattan, I closed my office door and headed toward the executive elevator, no longer an outsider navigating unfamiliar territory, but a leader charting institutional transformation. The startup that everyone predicted would fail had instead succeeded beyond conventional measures, not by disrupting Meridian from outside, but by transforming it from within. Sometimes the most revolutionary act isn't abandoning established systems, but reimagining what they can become when infused with entrepreneurial vision. And sometimes the greatest triumph isn't returning to prove critics wrong, but returning to implement possibilities they couldn't see, transforming limitation into opportunity, skepticism into partnership, and traditional thinking into revolutionary results. The Morgan Club occupied the penthouse floor of a historic building in the financial district, its wood-paneled dining room serving as neutral territory where industry competitors occasionally broke bread while Manhattan's lights sparkled beyond arched windows. Reserved exclusively for the financial elite, the club maintained traditions dating back generations. Jacket required, phones forbidden, conversations conducted in measured tones beneath crystal chandeliers. I arrived precisely at 7, surrendering my phone to the maitre d' before being escorted to a private dining room where Meridian's board had assembled for pre-dinner cocktails. The setting, simultaneously intimidating and exclusive, represented yet another threshold I crossed in my unexpected trajectory. Chairman Victoria Harrington noticed my arrival first, breaking away from a conversation to welcome me. Up close, her reputation for formidable intelligence was evident in sharp eyes that evaluated while expressing genuine warmth. "Mr. Mitchell, thank you for joining us," she greeted, extending her hand. "Your presentation sparked considerable discussion during our closed session." "I appreciate the invitation," I replied, accepting her handshake. "Technology transformation benefits from direct governance engagement." "Indeed." She gestured toward the other board members. "Several colleagues have specific questions about your long-term vision. Tonight offers an opportunity for more candid exchange than formal presentations allow." The observation revealed dinner's true purpose: extended assessment beyond boardroom formality. I was being evaluated not just for my technical expertise, but for executive presence and strategic thinking. The distinction mattered enormously in an institution where leadership culture remained as important as technical capabilities. Blackwell appeared at my side, subtly guiding me through introductions to board members I hadn't previously met. Each interaction followed an unwritten protocol: brief professional acknowledgement, measured personal connection, implicit evaluation. These leaders had collectively guided Meridian through multiple market cycles and competitive transformations. Their interest in my division signaled both opportunity and scrutiny. During dinner, conversation initially focused on neutral territory: market conditions, regulatory developments, competitive landscape. Multiple wine courses appeared as servers choreographed a sophisticated dining experience. Only after main courses arrived did discussion shift toward my division's strategic initiatives. Douglas Werner, the technology skeptic who had questioned regulatory compliance during my presentation, raised the first substantive topic. "Your predictive trading module demonstrates impressive results in controlled environments," he observed, cutting precisely into a perfectly seared steak. "What concerns me is behavioral adaptation across broader market implementation." The observation was sophisticated, looking beyond technical performance to second-order effects once the technology achieved scale. "You've identified a critical consideration," I acknowledged. "Sequential deployment allows us to measure feedback effects before wider implementation. We're actively modeling adaptive market responses through game theory simulations." My answer satisfied Werner visibly, but prompted follow-up from Bernard Keller, a board member with extensive algorithmic trading background. "Game theory models assume rational actor responses. Markets frequently exhibit irrational behavior, particularly during stress events." "Exactly right," I agreed, recognizing the insightful challenge. "Which is why our models incorporate behavioral finance parameters and stress testing under historical crisis conditions. We supplement quantitative projections with qualitative expert evaluation, maintaining human oversight of model limitations." The exchange continued with increasing complexity, other board members joining with nuanced questions about technical, architecture, talent strategy, and competitive moats. Throughout, I maintained the balance Blackwell had coached: confident expertise without arrogance, institutional commitment with an innovative perspective. Harrington observed more than participated, evaluating my responses within the context of Meridian's broader strategy. Only during dessert did she engage directly with a question that transcended technical considerations. "You've experienced Meridian from multiple perspectives: mid-level analyst, departed founder, returned executive," she noted. "That grants unusual insight into our institutional culture. Where do you see our greatest cultural strength and our most significant cultural vulnerability?" The question was masterful, simultaneously flattering and acknowledging my unique journey while probing for critical assessment of the organization. It invited both loyalty and candor, with significant potential for misstep. I considered it carefully. Before responding, Meridian's greatest cultural strength is institutional knowledge, accumulated expertise that informs risk assessment and client relationships. That depth creates a durable competitive advantage that technology alone cannot replicate. Heads nodded around the table, appreciating recognition of the firm's heritage. Our most significant vulnerability, I continued with measured directness, is communication friction between innovation functions and traditional business lines. Transformative opportunities are frequently diluted by translation barriers between technical capabilities and operational implementation. My observation touched a recognized challenge without assigning blame, acknowledging institutional complexity while suggesting improvement potential. Harrington's slight smile indicated appreciation for the balanced assessment. "How would you address that friction point?" she asked. "We've implemented what we call capability translators within my division," I explained. "Team members with both technical expertise and business acumen who focus exclusively on bridging understanding gaps. They work directly with business units to convert abstract capabilities into concrete application scenarios." Douglas Werner leaned forward with interest. "That's reminiscent of the innovation liaison model from manufacturing transformation. Does it function similarly here?" "Exactly right, though adapted for financial services context," I confirmed. "The key distinction is their reporting structure. They're evaluated on successful implementation rather than technical development, aligning incentives with business adoption." The conversation expanded as board members related the approach to other transformation initiatives they'd observed or guided. Throughout the exchange, I noticed Blackwell's subtle approval as the discussion elevated from technical specifics to institutional strategy. Territory that confirmed my transition from divisional specialist to potential executive leadership. As dinner concluded with coffee service, Harrington directed a final question that carried unmistakable significance. "As you consider Meridian's evolution over the next 5 years, what leadership capabilities become most critical for navigating the intersection of established financial services and emerging technologies?" The question wasn't just about abstract institutional needs. It was about specific leadership profiles that would guide Meridian's future. My response would inevitably reflect on my own executive trajectory within the organization. 3 capabilities stand out, I began thoughtfully. First, translational leadership, the ability to connect traditional finance expertise with emerging technological possibilities in both directions. Second, balanced judgment between competitive urgency and institutional stability, particularly regarding technological deployment. Third, cultivation of talent that bridges quantitative excellence with business acumen. Harrington nodded slowly, exchanging a brief glance with Blackwell that suggested alignment with their own thinking. "Well articulated. Those capabilities will certainly shape our leadership development priorities." As the dinner concluded, board members departed with thoughtful acknowledgments that signaled a threshold crossed. I'd been evaluated not just as a divisional specialist, but as a potential institutional leader. The distinction represented yet another evolution in my Meridian journey. Blackwell and I shared a car back uptown, offering a rare private moment to process the evening's significance. "You navigated that exceptionally well," he observed as Manhattan's illuminated skyline slid past our windows. "Harrington rarely engages so directly with divisional leadership." Her questions were precisely targeted, I noted, particularly regarding cultural dynamics and leadership capabilities. "The board is thinking beyond quarterly performance," Blackwell explained. "Your division represents our most successful technology integration, but more importantly, it demonstrates a leadership model that balances innovation with institutional strengths. That model has broader implications for Meridian's future." The implication hung between us. my role potentially expanding beyond divisional leadership to broader institutional transformation. The possibility represented yet another unexpected turn in a journey that had begun with that cardboard box and corridor whispers. "There's another development you should be aware of," Blackwell continued. "Wentworth Financial approached us regarding possible acquisition of DataVision's technology. They've recognized the competitive advantage our implementation provides. The information was surprising, but not entirely unexpected. Competitive response was inevitable given our visible success. Through Marcus Fletcher's connection, I assume? Precisely. Their offer significantly undervalues the technology, of course. But it signals recognition of the strategic advantage we've established." "How would you like me to respond?" I asked, recognizing the potential conflict between my DataVision equity position and Meridian responsibilities. "No response necessary at this stage," Blackwell assured me. "I mention it only to reinforce that our partnership structure has proven prescient. Had you remained exclusively with DataVision, Wentworth might be implementing your technology instead of attempting to acquire it after witnessing our success." The observation highlighted the unique value of our arrangement. Meridian had secured technological advantage through my divided loyalty rather than suffering from it. The seeming contradiction had become a synergistic strength. Arriving at my building, I thanked Blackwell for the strategic context before heading upstairs to my apartment. Though late, I needed to update Ethan on these developments, particularly Wentworth's acquisition approach, which would impact our negotiating position with Morgan Stanley. Ethan answered immediately despite the hour. "How was dining with the financial Illuminati?" he asked with characteristic lightness. "Enlightening," I replied, summarizing the dinner conversation while changing into more comfortable clothes. Harrington's questions suggest they're evaluating me beyond divisional leadership. "That tracks with our early vision," Ethan noted. "Remember our conversations about transforming financial services from within? You're positioned exactly where institutional change happens." His reminder referenced our earliest DataVision discussions, the recognition that meaningful transformation required not just brilliant technology, but strategic positioning within institutional structures. What had begun as necessity after my departure from Meridian had evolved into deliberate strategy. "There's another development," I continued, sharing Blackwell's information about Wentworth's approach. "Marcus Fletcher appears to be driving their interest." "Your former boss turned competitor," Ethan observed with audible irony. "The circle completes itself. How does that impact our Morgan Stanley discussions?" "Strengthens our position considerably," I analyzed. "Competitive interest from Wentworth validates our market positioning, potentially improving terms. I'd suggest referencing market interest without naming Wentworth specifically during negotiations." We continued strategizing for tomorrow's discussions, with Morgan Stanley, refining our approach based on these developments. Throughout the conversation, I recognized how seamlessly we navigated the complex intersection of corporate politics, startup dynamics, and personal relationships, territory that would have seemed impenetrably foreign during my analyst days. After concluding the call, I stepped onto my apartment's balcony overlooking Central Park, the warm June evening providing perfect contemplation conditions. The city stretched before me, Financial District to the south where I'd just dined with Meridian's board, Midtown where my executive office now commanded panoramic views, Brooklyn where DataVision continued expanding into new headquarters. My journey through these urban territories paralleled my professional evolution, from constrained analyst to risk-taking founder to boundary-spanning executive. Each transition had seemed final at the time, yet proved merely preparatory for the next unexpected evolution. The following morning brought practical application of these philosophical reflections. The Morgan Stanley investment team arrived at DataVision's offices for final term sheet negotiations, with Ethan leading discussions while I participated remotely during breaks from my Meridian responsibilities. We've received expressions of interest from multiple potential strategic partners, Ethan informed them, implementing our strategy without specifically naming Wentworth. Your terms are competitive, but require refinement regarding governance. Provisions. The approach yielded immediate results. Morgan Stanley improved their valuation by 15%, while relaxing certain control provisions that had concerned our executive team. By afternoon, we'd reached agreement on fundamental terms, with legal teams authorized to proceed toward definitive documents. Remarkable how competitive interest focuses the mind, Ethan observed during our debrief call. They moved significantly, on both valuation and governance. The Wentworth approach, however unwelcome, strengthened our position considerably. Perfect timing with the board dinner, I noted. These developments reinforce the strategic narrative I shared with Harrington regarding our technological moat and competitive positioning. The synchronicity of these events, board dinner validating my executive potential, competitive approaches confirming our technological value, investment terms improving our financial foundation, created momentum that carried through subsequent weeks as both Meridian and DataVision achieved significant milestones. My division successfully deployed our predictive trading module to select trading desks, demonstrating performance that exceeded even our optimistic projections. Simultaneously, DataVision finalized the Morgan Stanley investment while expanding our client base beyond financial services into healthcare analytics, diversification that strengthened our market position while reducing dependency on any single sector. 3 weeks after the board dinner, Blackwell requested a private meeting in his office. His assistant's formal calendar invitation, labeled simply strategic discussion, suggested significance beyond our regular operational reviews. I arrived to find Blackwell alone, jacket off and shirt sleeves rolled up, reviewing documents spread across his expansive desk. "Ryan, thank you for making time," he greeted, gesturing toward comfortable seating in his office's conversation area rather than the more formal arrangement across his desk. "Always priority," I assured him, curious about the meeting's purpose, but maintaining professional composure. Blackwell settled into an armchair, studying me briefly before beginning. "The board has been evaluating Meridian's executive development pipeline, particularly regarding technological transformation capabilities. Victoria Harrington was quite impressed with your perspective during dinner. She asks incisive questions," I acknowledged. "The conversation was stimulating." "Her assessment was similarly positive," Blackwell continued, "which leads to the purpose of our discussion today. The board has authorized creation of a new executive position, Chief Transformation Officer, responsible for accelerating technology integration across all Meridian divisions." The direction became immediately clear, though I maintained neutral expression as Blackwell continued. The role would report directly to me, with divisional influence spanning operations, client services, trading, and risk management, essentially institutionalizing the integration model your division has pioneered. Ambitious scope, I observed. Cross-divisional transformation requires significant authority and institutional support. Precisely why it reports to CEO level. With board visibility, Blackwell confirmed. The board believes your unique background, having experienced Meridian from multiple perspectives while demonstrating technological vision and practical implementation skills, makes you ideally suited for consideration. Though the possibility had been implied during board discussions, the formal opportunity represented another inflection point in my Meridian journey. The Chief Transformation Officer role would elevate me to Meridian's Executive Committee, the highest operational leadership tier reporting directly to Blackwell and regularly engaging with the board. "I'm honored by the consideration," I responded carefully. "The opportunity aligns with my commitment to institutional transformation. However, it presumably impacts my DataVision involvement in ways requiring careful structuring." "We've anticipated those considerations," Blackwell assured me. "The board recognizes your founder equity and strategic involvement as assets rather than conflicts. We envision maintaining the partnership structure with modified terms reflecting your expanded Meridian. Responsibilities. He outlined the proposed arrangement. I would transition to executive leadership while maintaining my DataVision board seat and equity position. Operational responsibilities would shift fully to Ethan and the expanded management team, with my involvement focused on strategic guidance rather than day-to-day operations. The board views your DataVision connection as valuable specifically because it represents innovative thinking outside traditional financial services, Blackwell explained. The challenge is balancing time allocation and potential conflicts, which we believe this structure addresses effectively. The proposition elegantly solved the potential conflict while preserving value for both organizations. I would guide Meridian's transformation with insights gained through DataVision while maintaining strategic input at DataVision informed by enterprise implementation reality at Meridian. The compensation structure includes significant long-term incentives aligned with successful transformation milestones, Blackwell added, sharing preliminary terms that represented substantial advancement beyond my divisional package. The board authorized an accelerated timeline given competitive technology pressures. They've requested your decision within 2 weeks. The opportunity required careful evaluation, not because of compensation or prestige, but because it represented another identity evolution. From analyst to founder to division head to executive leadership, each transition built upon previous experience while requiring adaptation to new responsibilities and expectations. I appreciate the confidence this represents, I told Blackwell. The opportunity is compelling both professionally and strategically. I'll need to discuss implications with Ethan regarding our partnership structure. Entirely appropriate, Blackwell agreed. I've already spoken with Ethan conceptually, without specific details. He expressed preliminary support pending your discussion. The revelation that preliminary conversations had already occurred reflected institutional thoroughness rather than presumption. Blackwell had quietly assessed partnership viability before. Formal propositions. The approach demonstrated respect for both my position and the DataVision relationship. That evening, Ethan and I met at a quiet restaurant near Central Park to discuss the opportunity's implications. His initial reaction combined enthusiasm and pragmatism. This accelerates the institutional influence we've always envisioned, he noted after I outlined the proposition. Chief Transformation Officer with direct board visibility represents extraordinary leverage for the technologies we're developing. It also fundamentally changes my operational involvement at DataVision, I reminded him. You'd assume complete management control, with my role limited to board participation and strategic advisory. That transition was inevitable as we scaled, Ethan observed practically. Morgan Stanley's investment already necessitates management expansion. Your executive elevation at Meridian potentially creates greater long-term value than continued operational involvement with us. His perspective reflected our evolved thinking about institutional transformation, the recognition that changing financial services might ultimately require embedded leadership within traditional structures rather than disruption exclusively from outside. There's more, I added, sharing Blackwell's comment about competitive approaches from Wentworth. Marcus Fletcher appears to be positioning them as technology competitors, though their capabilities remain unproven. Your former boss turned market competitor, Ethan mused. While you become Chief Transformation Officer at the institution, he forced you to leave. If this were fiction, readers would criticize the heavy-handed symbolism. The observation made me smile despite the weighty decision before us. Life occasionally lacks subtlety. What does your instinct tell you? Ethan asked directly. I considered the question seriously. That institutional transformation was always our ultimate objective, whether we recognized it initially or not. DataVision represents technological capability. Meridian represents institutional implementation. The combination drives meaningful change at market scale. Then the question answers itself, Ethan concluded. you accept the executive role, leveraging institutional position to accelerate transformation. I continue building DataVision's technological capabilities and market presence. Together, we essentially operate as a unified strategy across institutional boundaries. The clarity of his assessment crystallized my thinking. The apparent contradiction between corporate leadership and entrepreneurial vision dissolved when viewed through transformation's lens, different positions providing complementary leverage toward shared objectives. The path seems clear when framed that way, I acknowledged, though it represents another identity evolution I hadn't anticipated. The entire journey has been an unexpected evolution, Ethan reminded me. From analyst to founder to division, head to executive leadership, each transition building on previous understanding while opening new possibilities. His characterization perfectly captured the strange symmetry of my professional trajectory. Departing Meridian had been necessary to develop capabilities invisible from within, while returning enabled implementation at scale impossible from without. The seeming contradiction had become a synergistic strength. 2 days later, I accepted Meridian's offer, initiating transition planning for both organizations. Blackwell announced my appointment at the quarterly executive committee meeting, framing the new role as institutional commitment to technological transformation. My division leadership would transition to Jessica, ensuring continuity while preparing for expanded institutional mandate. The announcement generated predictable reactions throughout Meridian. Excitement from transformation advocates, apprehension from traditional business lines, curiosity from neutral observers. My unique trajectory had become institutional knowledge, with earlier mockery transformed to cautious respect, as results validated the unconventional path. The most meaningful reaction came unexpectedly through industry channels. A message from Marcus Fletcher congratulating my appointment while proposing coffee to discuss potential synergies between our organizations. The outreach represented remarkable evolution from the man who had laughed me out of his office 2 years earlier, dismissing my potential and predicting my failure. Life's circular nature occasionally delivers perfect closure, though rarely on anticipated timelines or through expected channels. My journey from ridiculed analyst to transformation executive hadn't followed conventional progression or predictable trajectory. Instead, it demonstrated that meaningful evolution often requires departing established paths, risking failure and mockery, and returning with perspectives invisible to those who never leave. As I prepared for executive committee orientation the following week, a package arrived at my office, a sleek business card holder identical to the one Jessica had given me upon my division director appointment, but engraved with my new title, Ryan Mitchell, Chief Transformation Officer. The simple object symbolized an extraordinary journey, from anonymity to mockery to vindication to leadership. The path had never been linear, the destination never certain, the victories never guaranteed. Yet each challenge, each risk, each moment of doubt had contributed an essential perspective to the leader I had become. Sometimes the most valuable journeys begin with mockery and end with transformation, not just of career trajectory or professional identity, but of institutional possibilities and market realities. The colleagues who had laughed couldn't have imagined where that departure would lead, not just to my return as their director, but ultimately to my elevation as transformational leader, guiding Meridian's evolution in a rapidly changing financial landscape. The greatest vindication wasn't proving critics wrong, but creating possibilities they couldn't imagine, transforming limitation into opportunity, skepticism into partnership, and conventional thinking into revolutionary results. Sometimes leaving is necessary for growth, failure is a disguised opportunity, and success arrives through unexpected channels. And sometimes, the journey that begins with a cardboard box and corridor whispers ends with executive leadership and institutional transformation, reminding us that greatness often emerges from our most challenging moments, if only we have courage to pursue the path others mock as impossible. 18 months into my tenure as Chief Transformation Officer, Meridian had evolved almost beyond recognition. What began as experimental technology implementation within a single division had expanded into enterprise-wide transformation, touching every aspect of the organization. The traditional financial institution now operated with technology at its core, rather than its periphery, a fundamental shift in both operations and culture. My first executive committee meeting remained vivid in memory, entering the mahogany-paneled boardroom as peer rather than presenter, taking my designated seat at the table where institutional strategy materialized. The initial wariness from traditional division heads had gradually transformed to collaborative engagement as our initiatives delivered measurable results across business lines. Today marked another significant milestone, our annual investor conference, where Meridian would publicly unveil its comprehensive technology strategy to analysts, institutional investors, and media. As architect of that strategy, I would present alongside Blackwell and our CFO, unprecedented visibility for someone just 3 years removed from mid-level analyst obscurity. "Ready for your market debut?" Jessica asked, joining me for coffee before final preparation. Her promotion to division director had proven remarkably successful, with her natural leadership abilities flourishing in the expanded role. "As ready as possible," I replied, reviewing presentation notes one final time. Though public markets add dimension beyond internal presentations, the numbers speak for themselves, she reminded me. 32% efficiency improvement across operations, 18% revenue growth in algorithm-enhanced trading desks, client retention up 23% in divisions using predictive analytics. The metrics reflected extraordinary transformation, achieved through methodical implementation of technologies developed initially at DataVision, but expanded significantly through Meridian's institutional resources. What began as analytics enhancement had evolved into comprehensive operational reinvention spanning trading algorithms, risk assessment, client engagement, and regulatory compliance. Wall Street Journal called yesterday requesting pre-briefing, Jessica noted. Communications directed them to the public presentation, but it signals strong interest in our approach. Media attention had intensified as Meridian's performance consistently exceeded analyst expectations over recent quarters. Our technology transformation had begun attracting attention beyond financial circles, with technology publications analyzing our approach as a potential model for enterprise-scale implementation. Blackwell appeared at my office door, immaculate, as always in a tailored navy suit that projected understated authority. "Final review before we face the analysts?" he suggested, joining us at the conference table. For the next 30 minutes, we refined key messaging points and anticipated challenging questions. Blackwell had proven an extraordinary mentor throughout my executive transition, providing guidance on institutional navigation while championing our transformation agenda against occasional resistance. The analyst community remains skeptical about sustainable competitive advantage, he noted as we concluded preparation. They understand our efficiency gains, but question whether technology truly transforms our market position versus simply reducing operational costs. Which is precisely why today's presentation emphasizes proprietary capabilities beyond efficiency, I replied. The predictive client engagement model demonstrates value creation rather than merely cost reduction. Blackwell nodded with appreciation for the strategic framing. Victoria Harrington will attend today. The board remains particularly interested in competitive moat aspects of our transformation. The chairman's attendance underscored the presentation's significance beyond quarterly metrics. This wasn't routine investor communication, but strategic positioning of Meridian's evolved identity in the financial marketplace. As we departed for the conference center, my phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. Morgan Stanley partnership announcement cleared final legal review. Green light for joint reference during your presentation. Knock 'em dead. The message referenced significant development in DataVision's evolution, formal strategic partnership with Morgan Stanley that complemented our Meridian implementation. The arrangement allowed coordinated technology development while maintaining appropriate competitive boundaries between financial institutions. The grand ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria Hotel had been transformed into Meridian's presentation venue, with the company's logo prominently displayed behind a stage where executive leadership would address the financial community. Rows of chairs accommodated over 300 attendees, investment analysts, financial media, institutional investors, and industry observers. Behind the stage, the executive team gathered for final preparation as attendees filed into the ballroom. The CFO would open with a financial performance overview, followed by Blackwell discussing strategic positioning, culminating with my presentation of transformation initiatives and future roadmap. Through partially opened curtains, I observed familiar faces in the audience, analysts who followed Meridian closely, financial journalists from major publications, representatives from competitor institutions conducting professional intelligence gathering. Among them sat Victoria Harrington and several board members in the reserved front section, their presence emphasizing institutional commitment to our transformation narrative. Less expected was a face I recognized in the middle section, Marcus Fletcher, now formally identified as Chief Technology Advisor at Wentworth Financial according to his registration badge. His presence represented both competitive intelligence gathering and perhaps personal curiosity about the transformation he had once dismissed as impossible. The CFO's opening presentation proceeded with practiced precision, quarterly metrics, annual comparisons, capital allocation strategy. Financial performance provided the foundation for the transformation narrative, with profitability metrics demonstrating technology investment translating to shareholder value. Blackwell followed, with broader strategic context, positioning Meridian's technology transformation within industry evolution. Financial services face unprecedented disruption from technology-native competitors, he explained. Our approach integrates technological innovation within institutional expertise rather than treating them as separate domains. The framing directly addressed analyst skepticism about traditional financial institutions competing effectively against fintech disruptors. Rather than positioning technology as a separate initiative, Blackwell described fundamental rewiring of institutional capabilities, transformation rather than addition. When Blackwell introduced me as chief architect of this transformation, stepping away from the podium as I approached, the symbolic transition generated subtle reaction across the audience. Analysts familiar with Meridian's traditional executive profile noted the distinction, a younger leader with unconventional background assuming a prominent market-facing role. Meridian's transformation extends beyond efficiency improvement to fundamental capability enhancement, I began, launching presentation slides that illustrated our integrated approach. We've implemented technology not just to reduce costs, but to create entirely new possibilities within institutional finance. For the next 30 minutes, I outlined Meridian's transformation journey, from initial analytics implementation to enterprise-wide capability deployment. The presentation balanced technical specifics with business outcomes, quantifying value creation while emphasizing proprietary capabilities that competitors couldn't easily replicate. Our predictive client engagement model demonstrates this integrated approach, I explained, highlighting a capability that combined AI-driven analytics with institutional relationship expertise. The technology identifies emerging client needs based on market patterns and portfolio composition, while our relationship managers provide contextual interpretation that pure technology players cannot match. The capability exemplified our strategic positioning, neither traditional financial institution nor pure technology disruptor, but synthesis that leveraged advantages from both domains. Client retention metrics and relationship expansion data demonstrated the approach's effectiveness beyond theoretical appeal. Throughout the presentation, I observed Marcus Fletcher's expression transitioning from skeptical assessment to reluctant recognition. The transformation he had dismissed as impossible when I left Meridian had manifested at institutional scale, validating the vision he had once mocked. The most significant announcement came toward the presentation's conclusion: our expanded technology partnership ecosystem that included Morgan Stanley's recent formal engagement with DataVision. Meridian recognizes that financial transformation extends beyond institutional boundaries, I explained. Our partnership with DataVision has expanded to include coordinated development with select peer institutions, creating industry standards, while maintaining appropriate competitive distinction. The announcement generated visible interest among analysts, who recognized its implications for industry-wide transformation rather than merely institutional advantage. Several began making notes with increased intensity, recognizing strategic significance beyond quarterly performance. When the presentation concluded, Blackwell rejoined me for the question and answer session, a potentially challenging exchange, with analysts trained to identify discrepancies or weaknesses in strategic positioning. The first question came from Patricia Yamamoto of Goldman Sachs, known for particularly incisive analysis. "Your transformation metrics are impressive," she acknowledged. "However, they primarily reflect internal operational improvements. How do you measure competitive advantage in client acquisition and retention against both traditional competitors and fintech disruptors?" The question addressed precisely the concern Blackwell had anticipated during our preparation. Our competitive metrics track 3 dimensions, I explained, advancing to a slide prepared for this specific question. Traditional competitor comparison shows 23% higher client retention and 18% greater share of wallet expansion. Against fintech competitors, we measure capability adoption, where our institutional expertise provides 37% higher engagement in high-complexity services. The specific metrics demonstrated our analytical rigor while addressing the central concern about competitive positioning. Yamamoto nodded with professional appreciation for the comprehensive response, making additional notes as I continued. Perhaps, most significantly, we've created an entirely new client category: institutional clients who previously considered fintech solutions inadequately robust while viewing traditional providers as technologically insufficient. This expanded addressable market represents a significant growth opportunity beyond traditional competitive dynamics. Questions continued for nearly 40 minutes, ranging from technical implementation details to talent acquisition strategy to regulatory considerations. Throughout the exchange, I maintained balance between technical command and strategic vision, reinforcing Meridian's evolved identity as a technology-integrated financial institution rather than a traditional bank with a digital facade. As the session concluded with Blackwell's closing remarks, analysts departed with noticeably engaged expressions. The presentation had provided substance beyond typical investor communications, offering genuine insight into Meridian's strategic evolution. Several approached the stage with follow-up questions or business cards, indicating interest in detailed briefings beyond the public presentation. Victoria Harrington intercepted me as I gathered materials, her expression conveying measured approval. "Compelling narrative," she observed. "Particularly effective connecting technological capabilities to institutional expertise. The board appreciated the clear competitive differentiation." "Thank you, Chairman," I replied. "The integration represents extraordinary collaboration across traditional divisions and newer capabilities." "Indeed." She glanced briefly toward the departing audience before adding, "I noticed Marcus Fletcher attended. Competitive intelligence gathering, presumably." "Presumably," I agreed, maintaining professional neutrality despite the personal history involved. Wentworth appears to be pursuing similar integration, though with a different architectural approach. "Less successfully, according to industry metrics," Harrington noted with a slight smile. "Sometimes institutional knowledge requires supplementation with genuine innovation. Your journey provided both." Her observation acknowledged the unique value of my unconventional path, institutional understanding enhanced by external perspective, rather than limited by traditional boundaries. Before I could respond appropriately, she continued with an unexpected direction. The board's governance committee meets next Thursday regarding executive succession planning. Blackwell has recommended your inclusion in the formal leadership development program. I've asked him to extend an invitation to dinner following the committee session. The information carried unmistakable significance. Meridian's leadership development program identified potential succession candidates for C-suite positions, including eventually CEO. Inclusion represented an extraordinary vote of confidence beyond my current executive role. I'm honored by the consideration, I responded, maintaining composed professionalism despite the invitation's implications. Your transformation leadership has demonstrated both operational excellence and strategic vision, Harrington continued. The dinner provides an opportunity for committee members to engage beyond formal presentations. As she departed to join other board members, Blackwell approached with a satisfied expression. The presentation landed exactly as intended, he observed. Analyst reactions suggest we've successfully repositioned Meridian in the competitive landscape. Harrington mentioned the governance committee dinner, I noted, seeking his perspective on this unexpected development. She moved quickly then, he acknowledged. Yes, I've recommended your inclusion in formal succession planning. Your transformation leadership has demonstrated capabilities relevant to institutional direction. The conversation continued briefly, before we were interrupted by approaching journalists seeking additional comments. As Blackwell engaged with media inquiries, I noticed unexpected movement at the room's periphery. Marcus Fletcher approaching with deliberate purpose. Impressive presentation, he offered as a preliminary greeting. Professional courtesy masking our complicated history. The predictive client engagement model shows particular promise. Thank you, I replied with genuine professionalism, our past conflict seeming increasingly distant against current realities. Integration provides opportunities beyond separate technology initiatives. Indeed. He hesitated briefly before continuing. With unexpected candor. Wentworth has pursued a similar direction with less cohesive results. Our architectural approach lacks certain foundational elements your implementation demonstrates. The acknowledgement represented remarkable evolution from the man who had mockingly dismissed my potential 3 years earlier. Professional reality had apparently superseded personal history, forcing recognition of demonstrable results. Integration requires particular conditions, I offered diplomatically. Institutional knowledge combined with innovation perspective, executive sponsorship aligned with technical capability. Conditions Wentworth hasn't fully established, he conceded. Which leads to my approach today. I've been authorized to explore potential dialogue regarding limited technology licensing, specifically aspects of your predictive engagement architecture. The request represented extraordinary reversal, from dismissing our approach as doomed to seeking access to its capabilities. Market reality had apparently validated our vision beyond possibility of denial, creating unexpected opportunity from former conflict. An interesting proposition, I acknowledged neutrally, though with obvious competitive considerations requiring careful evaluation. Of course, he agreed quickly. Perhaps preliminary conversation exploring parameters. My team has prepared a conceptual framework addressing competitive boundaries. We exchanged contact information with professional courtesy, agreeing to schedule initial discussion while maintaining appropriate expectations regarding potential outcomes. As he departed, the interaction's symbolic completion struck me. From dismissive mockery to professional engagement, his journey paralleling Meridian's institutional evolution from technology skepticism to transformation commitment. The conference center gradually emptied as attendees departed with presentation materials and analytical impressions that would shape market narrative around Meridian's strategic direction. Blackwell concluded final media interactions before joining me for a brief assessment. Highly successful by all measures, he concluded with satisfaction. The transformation narrative landed precisely as intended, with analyst questions focusing on strategic advantage rather than implementation challenges. Marcus Fletcher approached. Regarding potential technology licensing, I informed him, summarizing the unexpected interaction. Wentworth appears to be reconsidering their independent development approach. Blackwell's expression combined surprise with strategic calculation. Interesting development. Their implementation challenges have become increasingly visible. Fletcher's approach suggests recognition of methodological limitations. The competitive dynamics require careful consideration, I noted. Though structured licensing could potentially accelerate industry-wide standards beneficial to established institutions versus pure technology disruptors. A perspective worth exploring, Blackwell agreed, though any engagement would require governance committee evaluation given competitive sensitivities. As we departed the conference center, reporters approached for additional commentary on Meridian's transformation strategy. Blackwell deftly managed these inquiries with practiced skill, balancing transparency with appropriate confidentiality regarding proprietary capabilities. Throughout these exchanges, I observed the interaction with professional detachment that would have seemed impossible during my analyst days. The performative aspects of executive leadership now familiar territory rather than intimidating exposure. The transformation extended beyond institutional capabilities to personal evolution, from technical specialist to strategic leader. Later that evening, Ethan and I met at a rooftop restaurant overlooking Central Park, celebrating the successful investor presentation while discussing implications of Wentworth's unexpected approach. DataVision had evolved dramatically under his leadership, expanding from startup uncertainty to established technology partner for multiple financial institutions. From office mockery to competitors seeking your technology, Ethan observed with characteristic appreciation for life's irony. Fletcher's approach represents remarkable market validation. Beyond personal vindication, I agreed, it potentially accelerates industry transformation through standardized capabilities. Strategic licensing could expand impact beyond individual institutional implementations. Our conversation expanded to broader implications. How transformation initially dismissed as impossible had created industry-wide reconsideration of technology integration within financial services. What began as a personal journey had evolved to institutional transformation and now potentially sector-wide evolution. The Governance Committee dinner represents another unexpected development, I shared, updating him on Harrington's invitation to the succession planning discussion. Not entirely unexpected, Ethan countered thoughtfully. Your leadership has demonstrated precisely the synthesis traditional institutions require. Technological vision with institutional understanding. The combination remains exceptionally rare in financial services. His observation highlighted the unique value created through unconventional journeys, capabilities invisible to those who remained fully within institutional boundaries or completely outside them. The perspective gained through departure and return had created distinctive insight impossible through traditional career progression. As dinner concluded and Manhattan's lights illuminated the surrounding cityscape, our conversation shifted to philosophical reflection on transformation's nature. How genuine evolution requires willingness to risk established identity, embrace uncertainty, and synthesize seemingly contradictory perspectives. The mockery when you left Meridian reflected institutional blindness to its own limitations, Ethan observed. Yet your return didn't represent capitulation to those limitations, but the introduction of expanded possibilities. That's transformation's essence, not abandoning identity, but evolving it beyond recognized boundaries. His characterization captured the journey's fundamental nature, not merely personal advancement, but expansion of institutional possibility through perspective gained, beyond traditional constraints. The path from analyst to entrepreneur to transformation leader had never been linear progression, but continuous evolution through seemingly contradictory experiences. The following morning brought tangible evidence of the presentation's impact. Analyst: reports describing Meridian's technological reinvention and strategic transformation with upgraded investment ratings and revised growth projections. Financial media featured our approach prominently, with several publications highlighting the unusual partnership model expanding beyond institutional boundaries. Most significantly, Meridian's stock price increased 4.7% as markets processed our strategic positioning, validation beyond metrics and narratives that our transformation had created recognizable shareholder value. The executive committee's morning briefing carried unmistakable satisfaction, as divisions reported positive client and market reactions to our public strategy articulation. Amid these professional developments, a message appeared from an unexpected source. Former colleagues from my analyst days reaching out with congratulations and reconnection attempts. Time and demonstrated success had apparently transformed their perception from mockery to admiration, professional distance to desired proximity. The evolution highlighted transformation's reciprocal nature, not merely personal or institutional, change but recalibration of entire relationship ecosystems as new realities superseded former assumptions. The colleagues who had whispered behind monitors now sought association with the journey they had once ridiculed. As I prepared for afternoon meetings advancing our transformation initiatives, a final message arrived from Blackwell. Wall Street. Journal requesting profile interview focused on your unconventional leadership journey. Communications recommending participation given strategic narrative reinforcement. Thoughts? The request represented yet another evolution, from anonymous analyst to ridiculed departure to profiled transformation leader. The journey had transcended personal advancement to become an illustrative narrative for institutional possibility, perhaps offering insight to others navigating similar territory between established structures and innovative vision. My response reflected this understanding. Happy to participate. The journey illustrates transformation's fundamental nature, evolution requiring both institutional understanding and innovative perspective. Our synthesis represents Meridian's distinctive advantage. As I sent the message, Manhattan's skyline stretched before my office windows. Financial district to the south where my analyst career began. Midtown where executive leadership now resided. Brooklyn where entrepreneurial vision had developed. The urban geography paralleled professional evolution. Territories once separate, now connected through integrated understanding. The colleagues who had laughed when I departed for a failed startup could never have imagined my return as a transformational leader guiding institutional evolution. The mockery reflected limited vision rather than genuine insight, inability to recognize possibilities beyond established patterns or imagine transformation's unconventional path. Yet their limitation had inadvertently created an essential condition for eventual success: the freedom to discover capabilities invisible from within institutional boundaries. Their mockery had launched a journey impossible through conventional progression, creating perspective unavailable through traditional advancement. Sometimes the greatest journeys begin with ridicule and proceed through uncertainty before arriving at transformation. The path from analyst to entrepreneur to executive leader had never been a predictable trajectory, but continuous evolution through seemingly contradictory experiences, each providing essential perspective unavailable through conventional progression, and sometimes the colleagues who laugh as you depart with a cardboard box eventually witness your return with transformation vision, not as vindication of individual ambition, but as expansion of institutional possibility through perspective gained beyond traditional constraints. The greatest success isn't proving critics wrong, but creating possibilities they couldn't imagine, transforming limitation into opportunity, skepticism into partnership, and conventional thinking into revolutionary results that benefit not just individual careers, but entire institutions and potentially industries. For transformation's essence isn't abandoning identity, but evolving it beyond recognized boundaries. A journey that often begins with mockery, proceeds through uncertainty, and arrives at possibilities previously invisible to those who never left established paths. 5 years after that fateful day, I walked out of Meridian carrying my belongings in a cardboard box. I found myself standing at the podium of our annual shareholder meeting. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel buzzed with anticipation as investors, analysts, and media awaited the announcement that had been carefully guarded despite intense speculation. As Chief Transformation Officer, I had guided Meridian through technological reinvention that transformed the venerable institution from traditional financial services provider to industry innovator. Our stock had outperformed the financial sector index by 87% over 3 years. Our client acquisition in premium segments had doubled, and our technological capabilities had become the industry benchmark against which competitors measured themselves. But today's announcement would reshape the landscape even further. Distinguished shareholders and honored guests, Lawrence Blackwell began from the podium, his commanding presence holding the room's attention. For 12 years, I've had the privilege of serving as Meridian's Chief Executive Officer during a period of unprecedented change in financial services. Today, I'm announcing my planned transition to Executive Chairman, effective January 1st. The room stirred with anticipation. Blackwell's intention to step down had been rumored, but never confirmed until this moment. The succession question had fueled speculation across financial media for months, with external candidates and internal executives all subject to analysis. Meridian's board of directors has conducted exhaustive succession planning, Blackwell continued. The governance committee, led by Chairman Harrington, has unanimously selected our next chief executive officer based on transformative leadership, strategic vision, and demonstrated ability to navigate financial services' technological evolution. He paused momentarily, his gaze sweeping across the attentive audience. It gives me profound satisfaction to announce Ryan Mitchell as Meridian's next Chief Executive Officer. The announcement generated immediately visible reaction. Not surprise that might greet an unexpected choice, but affirming nods suggesting the selection represented logical progression rather than disruption. My leadership of Meridian's transformation had created a natural pathway to executive leadership, demonstrating capabilities beyond traditional advancement metrics. As I approached the podium amid substantial applause, the journey's surreal symmetry struck me profoundly. From ridiculed analyst to startup founder to transformation leader to CEO designate, each transition building upon previous experience while expanding institutional possibilities. Thank you, Lawrence, for your extraordinary leadership and mentorship. I began, honoring the man who had recognized possibility in my unconventional background. And thank you to our board, shareholders, and Meridian colleagues for your confidence. For the next 15 minutes, I outlined my vision for Meridian's continued evolution. Not merely technology implementation, but fundamental synthesis of financial expertise and technological capability. The presentation balanced appreciation for institutional heritage with commitment to continuous transformation, acknowledging both stability and innovation as essential components of sustained success. Financial services' future belongs to organizations that combine institutional expertise with technological possibility, I explained. Not through superficial digital initiatives, but through fundamental integration that creates capabilities impossible through either dimension alone. The approach reflected philosophy developed through my unique journey, understanding gained through immersion in both institutional structure and entrepreneurial innovation. The perspective remained inaccessible to those who never ventured beyond traditional boundaries or never developed appreciation for established expertise. As my presentation concluded to enthusiastic reception, Victoria Harrington joined us at the podium for formal transition announcements. Her presence carried particular significance given her early recognition of my potential beyond traditional executive profiles. The board's unanimous selection reflects our confidence in Ryan's unique ability to lead Meridian through financial services' continued evolution, she explained. His journey from analytics expertise to transformation leadership demonstrates precisely the synthesis our industry requires: institutional understanding enhanced by innovative perspective. The characterization captured my professional evolution's essential nature. Not abandonment of established expertise, but expansion through experiences beyond traditional boundaries. The mockery that accompanied my departure had reflected limited vision rather than genuine insight, inability to recognize possibilities invisible from within institutional constraints. Following the formal presentation, shareholders and analysts approached with congratulations and questions about strategic direction. Among them appeared Marcus Fletcher, now Chief Strategy Officer at Wentworth Financial, following our limited technology licensing agreement. "Congratulations, Ryan," he offered, with professional courtesy that would have seemed impossible during our previous relationship. The appointment represents the logical progression of Meridian's transformation journey. "Thank you, Marcus," I replied with genuine professionalism that transcended our complicated history. The licensing partnership has demonstrated valuable potential for industry-wide standards. His acknowledgement of my leadership legitimacy represented personal evolution, paralleling institutional transformation. From dismissive mockery to professional respect, from technological skepticism to strategic partnership, market realities had ultimately validated vision beyond possibility of denial. As formal proceedings concluded, Ethan arrived for the private celebration we had arranged, his continued friendship representing an essential constant throughout my professional evolution. Data vision had flourished under his leadership while maintaining our strategic partnership, expanding into multiple sectors beyond financial services while retaining our foundational vision. From office pariah to CEO in 5 years, he observed with characteristic appreciation for life's unexpected trajectories. Not exactly the outcome your former colleagues predicted when they laughed you out the door. A journey difficult to imagine from either starting point, I acknowledged. Neither Meridian nor Data Vision could independently create what our partnership achieved. His expression turned reflective. "Remember the night before you resigned? When you questioned whether leaving security for uncertainty represented careless risk or necessary growth?" The memory remained vivid, sitting in my apartment questioning conventional wisdom about career progression, stability, and professional identity. The anxiety had been genuine, the uncertainty profound, the potential for failure substantial. The question contained its own answer, I replied. Growth requires perspective impossible from within established boundaries. Departure created the possibility for return with expanded vision. A philosophy worth sharing beyond your personal journey, Ethan suggested thoughtfully. The profile interview with Wall Street Journal next week provides a perfect opportunity. The upcoming interview had expanded from leadership profile to comprehensive examination of transformation philosophy developed through my unconventional journey. The publication believed our approach offered valuable insight for individuals and institutions navigating similar territory between established expertise and innovative possibility. The most meaningful aspect isn't personal advancement, I noted, but institutional transformation through perspective gained beyond traditional constraints. Individual journeys matter primarily through their impact on collective possibility. Later, that evening, celebrating with close colleagues including Jessica, now Executive Vice President leading our expanded analytics division, conversation turned to the journey's unexpected nature. How departure once mocked as foolish risk had created a pathway to leadership impossible through conventional advancement. When you packed that cardboard box amid whispers and mockery, Jessica observed, could you have imagined returning as CEO-designate 5 years later? Not remotely, I acknowledged with genuine reflection. Each step made sense primarily in retrospect, revelation through experience rather than predictable progression. The mockery reflected limited imagination more than legitimate assessment, she noted, inability to recognize possibilities beyond familiar patterns. Her observation captured transformation's essential challenge: how genuine evolution requires willingness to risk established identity, embrace uncertainty, and synthesize seemingly contradictory perspectives. The colleagues who laughed couldn't imagine how departure might enhance return, how external perspective might strengthen internal understanding, how apparent contradiction might create distinctive synthesis. As celebration continued into the evening, my phone displayed notification from tomorrow's Wall Street Journal, advance publication of our profile interview with a headline that captured the journey's fundamental nature. The Transformation Path: How Leaving and Returning Created Revolutionary. Leadership at Meridian. The article examined philosophy developed through my unconventional journey, suggesting broader application beyond personal advancement or specific industry transformation. The lessons applied wherever established expertise required enhancement through innovative perspective, how institutions preserved valuable heritage while evolving beyond recognized limitations. The knowledge gained carried implications beyond financial services or technology integration, insight into transformation's universal nature across organizations, industries, and individual careers. The journey from mockery to leadership illustrated how genuine evolution often requires departure from comfortable certainty toward unknown possibility. Sometimes colleagues laugh when you leave established paths for uncertain ventures. Their mockery reflects limited vision rather than genuine insight, inability to recognize possibilities invisible from within traditional constraints. But transformation often requires precisely this courage: willingness to risk comfortable, certainty for expanded perspective impossible through conventional progression. And sometimes, the greatest journeys begin with cardboard boxes and corridor whispers before arriving at leadership possibilities invisible to those who never ventured beyond established boundaries. For transformation's essence isn't abandoning identity, but evolving it beyond recognized limitations. A journey that often begins with mockery, proceeds through uncertainty, and arrives at possibilities previously unimaginable to those who never left familiar territory. In the end, the colleagues who laughed when I departed for a failed startup ultimately witnessed my return with expanded vision, not as individual vindication, but as institutional transformation through perspective. Impossible without the courage to leave, the resilience to risk failure, and the synthesis to return with revolutionary possibility. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.